Are you a brewhead? I'm a brewhead. Are you a brewhead? I'm a brewhead. Y'all are brewheads? Yeah, we brewheads. So pour a glass of craft beer, we can do this. Yeah.
What's good, y'all? This is C, Certified Brewhead, and welcome to episode 106 of Beer Not the Shit, the podcast Adjunct series. This evening, we're back at it again. We got a brewery on this evening that I've heard about for a while. I recently got connected, maybe just around the time we moved out here a couple months ago, and I've been fortunate enough to sample a bunch of the beers and been extremely impressed. So I was really looking forward to hanging out tonight and learning more about the brewery, the different beers, and the approach to it, which is the approach to the business is unique. The approach to the beers is super unique, and I just think that's really cool in the day when we're sort of, fortunately flooded with breweries anywhere in the world that you're at. Essentially, having a unique approach is super valuable, and I'm really excited to hear about the whole story. So, guys, please welcome Rob Hern of Finger Brewing in the building. Welcome, sir. How are you, brother?
Hey, thanks for having me on, man.
Genuine pleasure, man.
Very well.
I love to hear it. Dude, really happy we connected. Very much been looking forward to this. I've since we connected, I've definitely been keeping strong tabs on everything that you're doing. I want to get into a lot of it tonight. I want to definitely touch on the obviously the beers and the styles that you sort of predominantly focus on, the branding, the social media approach, which is really cool. That I own a social media agency, so seeing particularly people in the beer industry do something unique is very, very interesting to me. So I appreciate you, man.
I love it.
I'm ready for it. So we are going to be kicking off tonight. We've got a bunch of beers, and we're kicking off with the beer that essentially is would you call it your flagship?
Yeah, I mean, it's the closest thing to a flagship that we have. There's almost always Lando available at the brewery.
Okay.
Almost. Not always. Yeah.
Which is interesting. Go.
It really depends. Like right now, we've sold so much more Lando on draft than I thought we would, that there's no Lando on draft. So there's some bottles available. Usually I'm like, okay, we got some of this tucked away or that tucked away. I was just like the last week, I was like, oh shit, there's no more kegs of Lando here. Like,
wow.
I was like, I gotta go make more Lando, which is I'll get into is
not that simple
thing for me.
I bet.
Yeah.
I also think it's fascinating that you have a bottle conditioned barrel aged sour as a flagship beer. Don't think I've ever heard of anything like that. So people can see the label right there.
Yeah, no, it's a very uncommon approach for very good reasons.
Okay. I'm stoked to hear about it. I think it's going to take us a little second to do it because this particular bottle has not only the cap, but it's got the cork in there, which I love. Make sure it's extra carbonated. What is the reason for the double cork? Is it just fun?
There's a bit of fun to that, but actually it's a homage to Belgian lambic producers, which
makes sense.
Lando I kind of consider my bastard booze.
Makes sense. As soon as you said that, I was like, of course. That's exactly why.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And I mean, the bottle shape, like it's all...
Everything is aimed from that.
It's all coming from those Belgian producers, which inspired me to essentially put Short Finger together and lead with Lando as our sort of flagship.
Love to see it. And by the way, so this is specifically batch T2. I notice all the batches are essentially 2 letters or a letter and a number. What's the thinking behind that?
Usually it's just whatever pops into my head while I'm doing it. So T2 is reference to second use tangerines.
Ooh,
Not
okay.
that I'm like a huge Terminator fan, although I do love Judgment Day. Who doesn't?
Great movie.
Yeah, so with so like all the A series, which is probably the most popular one we do, A is always denoting the neutral blend. So I think we've done, I think the last one we released was AF or
Okay.
E. So we've done like 6 essentially neutral
In the
blends
A.
of this, and yeah, it's
Okay.
a kind of a convoluted system that I am like, yeah, it's super obvious. It's just this, and everybody else is like,
Like what?
Rob, once again, I don't know what the fuck you are talking about.
Hey, do you know what? As long as it makes sense to you, that's all that matters. I'm
Yeah,
definitely. Oof, that
we actually have a
tangerine.
section. Oh yeah, we have a section on the site that lists all of the Lando batches we've released, and I
Okay.
believe T2 was the 22nd
Okay. twenty
batch.
second
Yeah.
batch. Do you do the same batches over and over, or once you've got T2, there's one batch of T2, that's it?
Usually I move on from it, so that's why the A series. That's when I'm repeating, and by A I'm looking for neutral oak, and there's specific characters of Lando I'm always trying to hit.
Okay.
And then when I do different stuff, I'm playing around with it. I might be using different barrels or different fruits, and like I really enjoy using second use fruits to add in soft fruit notes into the back end of beers without completely destroying the base of the beer.
Okay.
Just with some of the fruiting rates we do, and like some these are coming from like lambic producers. You're doing like 300 grams of whole fruit per liter, and
Okay.
it's like it is a lot of fruit. And often I find it runs on over some of the nuance of a really good base beer that might be there. So doing the second use like touch, I've done second use, third use, depending
Okay.
on the
So
blends
second.
and what I'm looking for.
Okay. All right. Well, bro, cheers.
Cheers.
Mm. Oh, hell yeah. So would you excuse me, would you consider this is so nice. Okay, barrel aged sour saison is a blend is what specifically the style essentially, because I know you're
Yeah,
just saying you're
which
inspired by the lambics, but it's not, it's like your homage to that essentially.
yeah, pretty much. It was one of those things of I didn't have a place like in the BJCP style guidelines to put Lando, because acidic saison is no longer really a recognized saison, even though traditionally in Belgium, like it would have been a thing. So, like everything, or not everything, like most things at Short Finger, I'm like, well, this doesn't fit into any style, so I'll just make it up and sort of put these things together and be like, this is what it is now.
Here
And
for it.
usually, people kind of who are into this type of beer, they kind of get it. You know,
Okay.
it's there's a lot of explaining in the tap room,
I would
depending
imagine.
on the knowledge of the person who comes in, which is like absolutely fine on my end. Like I always tell the tasting room staff, and when I'm in there, we want people to ask questions like, "What the hell is a barrel aged sour saison? I've never heard of this. I've heard of saison. You know, like what do you mean? Like, and all we always denote it as BA, which means barrel aged, but on the boards, we get sick of writing it and just like having these conversations with people of like, yeah, no, you definitely have not had a beer like Lando, because like like I don't know if there's anything super comparable to the project
Hmm.
and sort of the overall arching goal of what it is in Ontario at this point. I know there's a few beers that fall close into this category, but I don't think anything in the scope of Lando with the batches and the continuation of the base beer in different ways.
Hmm. I can't think of anything as you were saying that. Not to like, I'm still, I know not much about it, but even just looking for this blend on Untapped to get the info, and also thank you for keeping it up to date, because even just here you've got the full explanation, you've got all the different batches, so when I'm doing little selfie reviews and stuff, this is super
Yeah.
helpful for me to just find the information quick and easy. um
Hmm.
do this particular, I just want to talk about the nuances of this specific beer, then I want to go to the overall Lando project as a whole. So this compared to the regular Lando, which is the neutral barrels, this one was used the second use tangerines from your pale ale, the Tang
Yep.
pale ale
Yep.
from January this year. So
Mhm.
that is unusual for this. This is like a fruited version of the OG sort of sour saison Lando.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So this was part of the AE blend that I was doing, which was a neutral end, and I just took part of that and put it onto the tangerines and dry hop from that pale ale, which
Okay.
is something I do quite regularly with our sours, is blending pale ales and hoppy beers into them as a way of cutting that acidity, softening a few of the sharp points. Like there's whenever I'm making Lando, usually 90% of what is in Lando is that base beer, but I will use anything I have in the brew house that I think will benefit, add layers or soften notes that I'm looking to kind of drop a little bit. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm always playing with any beer that I have available in the brew house to change it up too, because 22 batches of the same beer and trying to be like, okay, now we're doing this one next. I'm like, well, what are we doing next? I'm like, I only have so many ideas, and I make a lot of different beers.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is okay. So then this is great though, man. Honestly, this is fantastic. The tangerines, just like I had the batch. I think it was B something, if I'm not mistaken. Was the other batch I had? You know what? I can actually tell you.
You had SF, I'm pretty
SF.
sure.
That's exactly what I had. I'm
Yeah.
looking at it here.
Which was
SF.
a blend of pale ales and came across super peachy. At least on my palate, I was blown away by the like stone fruit vibes I was getting from that,
Mm.
which is part of why I really like how T2 turned out. So this was a Lando Day release this year, and SF was the more popular of the two releases,
Okay.
and I love T2. I think this is like this weird tangerine tea. It's got all the depth
Mm.
of Lando in the background, so you have that like acidity that kind of pops on your palate a little bit, making it refreshing. But it to me, uh, this is again subjective, depending on where your sour palate is. I think this is like lovely, approachable sour,
Mm-hmm.
and you get that stone fruit notes in there, and then it goes into sort of earthiness with a little bit of slate and a touch of bitterness on the end. Nothing over the top, but helps balance the whole beer out.
Well explained. That's perfect, and it's exactly what it is. It's extremely balanced. It's very. I don't drink this style enough, probably because when everything like anything hoppy that's going to die gets preference, right, or it's gone.
Yep.
So I find then hence why all of us beer nerds have a cellar, and whenever I drink this style of beer, I'm always just like, man, I need to drink more of it. And this, I feel like I I had the other one maybe a month ago, so I don't know if I could tell
Mhm.
which one I prefer. But this is exceptional. This is so damn refreshing. I feel like this wouldn't be. You mentioned before when people come into the tasting room, maybe not super familiar with barrel aged sours and not really understanding what that might be. I feel like this would be something that people would lose their shit over. It's just so fruity,
Uh,
but it's not too much. It's got so many complex flavors, you know.
it's one of my favorite things when people come into the tasting room and they'll be in a group and then someone's just like, "Well, I don't really drink beer,"
And you're like, all
and I'm
right.
just like, "Well, you came to the right brewery because nothing here is going to taste like beer."
That's
That's
amazing.
not true. We started doing
Mm.
lagers, which I love. I love the lager program as well. We don't need to talk about that, but like it is nice, and it's good to have because we have a bike path in front of the brewery, and the amount of random people who come in are like, I just want a regular beer, and I'm like, yeah, well, I
Yeah.
guess.
Try this. Hey, this is more refreshing than a regular beer.
Oh, way more. But yeah, it's the people who are not necessarily into beer, or like, I really just like ciders, and I'm like, well, you know what, you should really try Lando. And the
Mm.
amount of people who are converted and are just like absolutely blown away that they like it,
Hmm.
because they've gone through a good chunk of their life being like, well, okay, there's hoppy craft beer, and I don't really like that. And then there's, you know, the Coors Light and the lager and that category. I'm not into that beer flavor that comes with that. And I'm like, well, beer is the most diverse liquid out there. I can literally do so many things with the amount of styles, with fruit additions, and like you have sour beers, you have hoppy beers, you have clean beers. Like, to say you don't like beer is crazy, because
That's
there's
such a
there's
good point.
got to be a beer that you would enjoy if you gave it a chance.
I couldn't agree more. I'm just writing that down. The most diverse. It could be the episode name. I don't want to forget. It's such a good point, man. And I want to touch on something really quickly that you mentioned there, that this specific beer is converting people to beer drinkers. Something I talk about here a bunch is the value and the undervalue of gateway beers. And gateway
Mm-hmm.
beers aren't really what you think. They're not a craft lager. I don't think craft lagers are really converting as many people as we think. Um, I always thought I've given New England IPAs to my girlfriend's friends who are wine drinkers, and they lose their minds. They're like, "What the fuck? I thought IPAs were bitter and hoppy." I'm like, "No, well, no."
Yep.
And this, like you mentioned, for cider drinkers, for white wine drinkers, it's hitting all those same notes that they're used to.
Mm-hmm.
This is not going to feel foreign to their palate. And you also made one of the best points I've heard in a while. Beer. What did you just say? Beer is not. You said beer is one of the most diverse, but you can't just like. There's not just beer is like is so many things now. So like to say you don't
Mm-hmm.
like beer is literally bonkers, because if you
There
drink
has to be a
liquids,
beer out there. Yeah.
there just has to be. It's just not everyone
Yeah.
is stuck 30 years ago, and understandably, if you don't chase it,
Well, like some of those lambic, like framboise, it is just like drinking raspberry juice. There's so much fruit in them.
oh yeah,
And like, I if you don't like fruit or raspberry, fine, but like, how can you tell me that is not just like delicious raspberry juice you're drinking? Like,
yeah,
I how would you not like that?
I
No.
couldn't agree more, man. So this is honestly exceptional. Like, I'm really really impressed with this, and it's got like I describe the mouthfeel as like chewy, which I
Mhm.
imagine you obviously know a lot more about this than me, but I love when the barrel aged sours have that chewiness to it. It's like this really kind of cool drying sensation in your mouth that you sort of feel like there's almost something in there.
Mhm.
Yeah, man, this is fantastic. I want to go more into Lando itself before we get into your beer history and everything, since we're drinking it
Yep.
first, setting off. So, how did it come about? Why is it the most important beer for you guys? Why did you choose a barrel age? You know, a beer that's damn near impossible to keep consistent. Well, to a degree, you know.
It is very hard to keep this beer consistent, which was a big part of why I was batching it off the get-go, of just trying to figure out the best way to approach this as a mainstay beer for us. So, I mean, the reason we picked this beer comes down, this is what I wanted to drink, and this is what I could not get in Ontario at the time. And so we're talking like Short Finger as a homebrew shop started in 2015 in that area, and like there's a lot of change, and there's a lot of barrel programs out there and different beers. But at that time, this was not something you could really get. I was going to Belgium once a year
Wow,
to get my fix. Yeah.
Jesus.
Um, and I would still be doing that if COVID had not happened. Um, but essentially, the base of Lando never changes. And I have been maintaining our mixed fermentation house culture in Short Finger since 2016. I have been repitching the same yeast, harvesting this yeast from barrels, from fermenters, and just to keep this flavor going. And I have like certain batches of Lando where I was like, oh, I fucking nailed that. I need that yeast. I'm like, that is the one that's going on. The strain is going. This is our direction. But what I do after the fact is what kind of makes Lando Lando.
Mm,
Where, yeah, it's the same base. We have our house culture, but then it goes into different barrels.
okay,
And minimum time in barrel is 18 months.
that's
Lando
all to
as
me.
a beer is a 2-year project from conditioning time and additional fermentations, re-fermentations on fruit, depending what I do. And it's essentially a project of, I'm going to make this same beer so many different ways for you and show you all the different things it can be. Like one of my favorite batches we did, it's the only batch that was 3 letters. It's called PPP, and it's Peach Pit Punch Down. So I had so many fucking peaches after the harvest. Like, I was like, I do not know what to do with all these peaches. I had this big open fermenter. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to like kick a Lando, and did peach punch downs, essentially, which is a wine term. I'm not sure if you're familiar
No,
with
I
it,
wasn't.
but it's you are on whole fruit and you take like a big flat paddle and you're just pushing that fruit down into the liquid constantly for while fermentation is going, and just making sure that fruit is always getting covered and keeps fermenting and the flavors go into it. So I did this for 4 days in an open fermenter with the Lando culture, and was just punching down these peaches and then into stainless and blended with a bunch of some barrel aged stuff to get like a super fresh peach note. And it was like a total mess. I hate whole fruit. Like, it was such a mess and took hours upon hours to clean up. But that beer is probably the best fruited beer I think I've ever produced. And it was a
Amazing.
ton of fun.
That's
Like,
awesome.
and that's kind of why I do. Lando is like stuff like that I'm like, this makes me happy to do these things and like play around with this base product and turn it into these different things and do fun things that most people are not doing in the brewing world. Like,
It's not super common, particularly all of that effort. I've never heard of punch downs like that. That is funny but fascinating. The fact that you spent 4 days doing that, and I feel like particularly in Ontario, I just came from Quebec. It's a little more common out there, this type of stuff, just because of the Belgian influence. But
I like Quebec more than Ontario for beer scene personally.
I can
just
see why.
with what I produce and like. I'm like, yeah, I think I get along with the Quebec brewers all right if I spoke French.
Well, I don't speak French, and I lived there for 10 years, and I interviewed a lot of them, and I think once or twice ever I got to say, oh, sorry, nobody here can speak English, so we can't do it. But they all typically speak English, and they're really cool. I feel like we can talk about it after, but if there's ever anyone that I know that you would like to be in touch with, I'll happily link you, man.
Sweet.
Good cats out there.
Man. Appreciate it.
I love seeing
I believe it.
there's not enough, being like I'm from neither place. I always wanted to see more of the collaborations between the two provinces, because it's just sort of like the breweries and the drinkers in each place kind of just had their heads down and just looking locally.
Yeah.
When if you just look around a little bit, like, oh wow, we could work together and that, you know.
Dunham was reaching out a little bit before to Ontario brewers and producers, like they did the Fooder Uni.
That was the best beer festival I've ever been to. Yeah,
that one was a ton of fun. Yeah, and after that, I went to that festival. We weren't pouring at it, and
you probably should have been.
Immediately afterwards, I like messaged Elwa and was like, "Yo, dude, if you do that again, I need to be at this festival." And then it never happened again.
It was booked for 20. Yes, oh man, I'm done with beer festivals for the most part. I just feel like I went too hard, but that was the one I would absolutely go to. That was supposed to be August 2020. Then it got pushed to last year. Then they just didn't even bother.
Yeah.
So it was like a one and done sitch. But they're definitely a vibe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What were we saying? Okay, so you were saying about the beer. Now, Lando itself. So obviously, I didn't realize this at first, but in the first batch of beers that you shipped over, there was this Lando, another version of it, and then there was one called Billy D. I have seen. I'm of the age. I was a kid when Star Wars came out, but I'd seen it. Didn't really remember, but I knew the name, and I was like, "Oh, that's what it is." I didn't immediately tie it together because the branding isn't, super Star Warsy.
It's slightly, yeah.
So I'm seeing the tie-in as I see in more one of the other beers we're going to drink tonight. obviously is a pretty direct tie in there. And then the more I followed you, the more I sort of, paying more attention to the beers you drop. And I was like, boom. And I was talking to someone, I can't remember who it was. I was talking to someone in the industry about you the other day, about the beers. And they were telling me how sick Billy D, maybe it was Justin at Toronto Brewing in Toronto.
Justin does. He loves.
Yeah, he
he
loves your shit.
Yeah,
He's the real reason, I think, part of the one we connected. He was like, he got me the barley wine. Yes, he was.
Because
the barley wine
chatting, and you were like, I've never had short finger before, and the first beer you had for me was
the barley wine,
which is a lovely barley wine. But no one in the world is like, yeah, you should go to Short Finger. They're really big on barley wines. But no, that's not what we're known for. But it is a lovely beer. And again, a beer that no one else is even doing. That tobacco I grow in my backyard and at the tasting room. And then I cure it for 2 months in a dry room in the brewery. And then re-ferment the barley wine for 2 months on the leaves before packaging it.
Amazing. That was extraordinarily unique, like crazy unique. I love that shit.
And it, like, the only reason I did that beer was because I knew how ridiculous it was, and it is illegal, I'm pretty sure.
I guess when you're mixing, right?
Yeah, because you're mixing, and I don't think anyone's going to care, and no one should. It's not like you're like smoking a cigar or anything. But I found that I'm stuff like that. I'm always like, no, you're not supposed to do this. I'm doing
it.
Yep.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. I totally forgot that was how we connected. So I had a podcast with Justin and Zach at Toronto Brewing, and we had that beer on the podcast. But he told me about it on our Instagram live that we had, and I was just getting sort of back into barley wines. I sort of went off him for years, and now I'm reappreciating. He's like, oh, you need this one. And then when we did the pod...
I almost sent you another barley wine that I haven't released yet.
You got more coming. I guess perfect timing.
I forgot to throw it in.
It's so good. I'm going to come by.
I was like, oh, yeah, I was going to send that, and then I didn't send that. Oh well.
It's so
okay,
good.
So
Lando. Billy D and Lando. What's the... Obviously, we know what the inspiration is. For people who don't know, I guess it's from Star Wars character at Star Wars. Billy D's the actor. Lando's the character.
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe talk about why a beer named after that character and then the actor, and why this beer for that name?
Sure. Yeah. So the funny thing is, everybody's like, wow, you really love Star Wars. I'm like, actually, I don't fucking like Star Wars that much. I really don't. As a kid, loved it. Like, of course I did. But as I grew up, I was like, wow, this is really just a tropey, terrible movie like that they keep redoing now. And when we first started Short Finger, my plan was to name saisons after secondary science fiction characters. So that's where Lando came in. I was like, yeah, we'll do Lando, blah, blah. And then I really was like, no, I'm really liking, and then vibed on it, and it became a thing. So now instead of a birthday, we have Lando Day every year, where I release Billy D, which is old, unblended Lando. So I pick one barrel that I'm like, nailed it, that's the one, and that is Billy D for the year. And it's like limited run of just whatever, and it's a kind of akin to like an unblended lambic. And then on the flip side of that, I also do Donald Glover, which is young, unblended, stainless Lando.
Oh, that's genius.
I do all this shit like this, and people are always like, what?
Like, what?
I don't get it. I'm like, oh, I put the pieces out there for you. It's right there.
You didn't have to think that hard. I'm not even a fan, like, at all, and I haven't seen Donald in the Star Wars, but I just knew that he did it, and that's enough to, like,
yeah, and there you go.
That's great.
Actually, I just pulled some Donald Glover today, and it's going to be on cask at Volo's cast days this year.
Nice.
And it'll probably be the only bit of Donald I do this year.
Okay. So okay, so
Yeah.
the secondary character thing, that's just for shits and giggles. Like you just thought that was funny,
Yeah.
like because that's hilarious to me. Particularly secondary characters, like intentionally ones that maybe people don't know.
Yeah,
So
people aren't like, oh yeah. I think on that first shipment I sent you, Wash was in that,
yes, that sounds
which
very
is
familiar.
it's a hoppy American farmhouse,
Yo, I love
and
that one. I really love that
that
one.
is that is a slow burn beer.
Yeah,
The first time I released it in
give it a
cans,
check. Mm-hmm.
I think we had it for months. Like people were just like, I don't even know what this is. I don't know what you have done. I'm not into it. And I tweaked it out. I was like, you know what? It was a very Brett heavy pale ale. It's essentially a Brett pale ale. Um, and I've totally changed the process on it and cleaned it up into a much more balanced Brett beer, if such a thing actually exists, and somewhat repeatable. Um, I need to really knock on wood after saying that. Um,
No one's expecting. It's
but
beer.
did you ever watch Firefly? It's like this
I don't think so. So it
old
was
like
series.
it was a series on TV, and Wash is the pilot in that show.
Okay, that's awesome.
So like, there's like, if you go
Yeah, I
through our
remember that.
names, it's like,
I'm
I
looking
mean,
here.
yeah,
Eula,
there's a
EULA.
lot of science fiction. Sorry.
There's one called EULA, like Eula.
Oh, Eula.
Yeah.
That one was actually, everybody thought that was a end user license agreement or something like that. Like people were like, "Why did you name it?" I was like, "Oh, I did not. That is named after a Mastodon song, actually." So that one is not a sci-fi
No sci-fi.
reference. But Sasuke, which we have right now, is a reference to the Expanse. All of our fermenters and bright tank
Have names.
in house, like our one bright tank, and the only new tank I've ever bought is called the Rossi, which is the Rocinante from the Expanse. I'm getting really geeky on you right now,
That's okay.
like super geeky on sci-fi stuff. So everybody's like, "Oh yeah, that guy is cool."
I'm not never really been into it, but I genuinely like. I feel like the people who are into beer have pretty diverse interests, and there's definitely going to be a
Yeah,
bunch of people who are going to be like, "That is sick."
yeah, yeah,
I feel it.
absolutely. Actually,
I
I
like
think
nerdy shit.
when
Nerdy shit is awesome.
oh, it's fun. It's
Yeah.
fun. Well, that's why I think that glass I sent you, and I released the shirts this year of Short Finger, Kitchener's Only, Sci-Fi Punk Brewery, and I was like,
Yes,
yeah, that's our thing. That's gonna be our thing now.
I like it. You got to lean into something extremely niche, and I don't know if it gets much nicher than that.
Oh, we did.
Okay, this is sick, man. Like, I'm glad we sort of understand what that is all about. So, Lando, like you said, is always going to be available, different variants. So, like every time someone comes in, essentially, would it be fair to say that there's almost going to be a different Lando available for them, whether it's bottles or kegs,
Yeah,
or draft?
pretty
Sorry,
much.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
and they are like I didn't realize like when I looked, I was like, okay, cool, different batches. I didn't read into this one that it had the second use tangerines or anything, so I didn't know that there. I think the one I had was like a cleaner, pretty straight up
Hmm.
and down version.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and it's I imagine you have them side by side, like you said, like the characteristics of that blend happen to get peach from that SF one, and this one is
Hmm.
straight citrus and tangerine. So it is a very different beer. The base is the same, but it's a very
Yeah.
different drinking experience. So it's all if you're into any of the Belgian lambics, goes and things like that, like this would definitely be, or even if you're not actually, um,
Yeah.
this is definitely something that's always a unique. It's you don't want. It's not you're not having the same beer over and over again, even if the blend is slightly different. It's pretty damn different. Would that be fair
Hmm.
to say that they're all pretty different?
Oh, they're all really different,
Okay.
and it's been, but except the A series, sorry, I should say there. They all have their own characteristic, and I'm usually coming up with like a pointed reason to do this batch. Like I'm like, okay, I really want to play with these hops, or like we had a whole series, JK, which is down at the brewery right now, which stands for Jester King,
Nice.
and it was just a homage to Noble King. And then we did NK, which was Noble King. So these were all dry hop versions. Sorry, so that one was all American hops, and then Noble King was all Noble hop dry hops. It was Tettnang and Saaz, and just like playing around with these different like ways that most people wouldn't handle a barrel aged sour with. Like I
Right.
do really heavy dry hops on it sometimes, and those are often the ones that some people are like, oh, I don't like that as much when you compare it to something like T2. But they are my favorite often. Like I think the current era one we did just had this bitter finish on the end, which usually I'm always like, sour and bitter do not go together. You have to be very careful with where you land and try and balance these beers at. I'm always very mindful of it. It was probably one of the least favorite ones of most people, but of course that means I'm usually like, actually,
That's
it's
my one.
delicious. Yeah. But like it just had this earthy, I think it was Tettnang. I was using a lot of it at the time. Earthy, kind of bitter finish that I felt really played into the slate backbone that kind of like softly comes in the end, and I just loved it. I mean, yeah, I mean,
That's awesome. I love
yeah.
that. I wouldn't have thought to use those type of hops. As when he
Mhm.
said noble, I was thinking like Cascade's not a noble hop, is it? I'm really sort of I always
No,
forget.
so
It's not
the noble hops are the like
like
European
Fuggles and
varieties.
Kent and Golding and all that shit.
Yeah, like Saws.
Yeah,
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 like
yeah. Okay,
that's a noble hop. Yeah.
gotcha, gotcha. I always forget. So interesting because those are the type of hops you would typically find in a lager or something like that. I
Yeah.
don't recall seeing them often in a saison farmhouse sour.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah, no, and I'll dry hop it at our pale ale rate. Like, and back then when I was doing that one, our pale ale rate was around 15 grams a liter. It's jumped up significantly since that, just with people's tastes. So not like this is not like a dainty little dry hop. Like this is
No.
significant right before conditioning.
Hmm. That's awesome, man. This is genuinely fascinating. So, okay, I feel like we've definitely covered Lando there. So, I
Yep.
feel like we're coming up to 40 minutes. I was enjoying that convo.
Oh,
So, do you want to
yep.
crack the next one? Your choice, my man. Whatever you feel
Why don't
is
we do Wax Poetic?
perfect. Love the name. So, this bad boy right here. Let's have a look at that artwork. Oh, by the way, the Lando artwork, the light bulb with the astronaut.
Yep.
Anything on that?
So that is a lot of our original labels are all done by my friend in Toronto, Rob Mursky. He's Mursk Tunes. I think it's at Mursk Tunes.
Okay.
And he's a cartoonist, illustrator, and all around lovely, lovely dude. And I really like found him through his Instagram while I was putting together the brewery, and he was just posting like sketches of his art, and I was like, dude, I love these. Like, can you draw me a whole bunch? And he just was like, yeah, do you
Sure.
want me to do anything in particular? I was like, no, just draw me a bunch of monsters. And he just sent me like photos of like just sheets and sheets of it, and I was like, I like that, and there you go.
Boom, boom, done.
So yeah, and actually the artwork for this one was done from one of my good buddies from university who's also in Toronto.
And this is sick as well. So this has got the like a crashed, like a rocket ship that's crashed with a dog. Oh,
Yeah.
it's a collab with Sawdust.
Yeah, so Wax Poetic is Solera, which we call a forever project. Are you familiar with Soleras?
I am where they have the
Yeah.
barrels and you just sort of like letting them all continue to drop down. You might be able to, I can't remember exactly, but do you want to re-explain it for those
Yep.
who
Sure.
don't know and to refresh my memory?
Yeah. So with a Solera, what at least how I approach it is every year I'll pull out. So now it's in a puncheon, which is about a 500-liter barrel. I'll pull out about a third of the liquid and put it into our conditioning tank,
Beautiful.
and then I'll put fresh wort back into that barrel and let it continue the culture and activate again, and essentially keep the active yeast going in there so that every year this beer changes slightly but is
Hmm.
still the same base, but it's always the same base beer going in, and then just pull some out, top it up, pull some out, top it up. And you can do this for as long as I'm alive, essentially. And I originally released this beer, I think it was the first, no, it'd be the second Funk Fest, because the first Funk Fest I did Close Your Eyes and Count to Funk with Sam. But I figured who was someone who would be into kind of a weird project that might take years and years and years and just keep going. And I was like, oh, Sam's a
Sam.
ridiculous dude. He'll do this with me.
I love Sam so much.
Yeah, he's good shit. So, yeah, no, the Wax Poetic project actually started with a poetry reading.
Okay.
We did a mini tap takeover with Sam and Sawdust at Kickoff, which was this like dumpy little like sports bar here in Waterloo, and it was close to my house. I always go there and drink. And Bill, the bartender, lovely dude, but it was always like soccer and hockey and all this stuff, and like students there. And I was like, oh, I really want to do this poetry reading here. So we took over the bar, and then it was just like an open floor poetry sort of reading. So like anyone could just like, it was like, yeah, you just stand on your chair and you can recite poetry that you really like from whoever, or if you have your own poetry, you can just read this to everyone if you're comfortable with it. And I loved it because I think it's the most silly and kind of ridiculous beer event, like tap takeover, that you could really do. It was like, yeah, it was gonna be poetry and beer, man. And just, I think Sam cried multiple times.
Did he
And
read
there's lots
poetry?
of poetry. Oh yeah, he read like poetry he wrote for his wife when he was in university.
Wow.
Like
I thought
he
there
dug
was. That's what
deep.
it says on the label, and I thought that was like just a joke. That's amazing. On you, Sam.
I mean, it was kind of a joke. It's like most things I do where I'm like, yeah, doesn't this sound ridiculous? We could do it. And then I'm like, well, we're going to do it now.
That's the only way to roll.
Yeah,
Okay, and then
exactly.
so you have the poetry reading, and then I guess that night the idea for the collab came about.
We were in town to do the initial batch. So then the
Okay,
next
okay,
year
okay.
when we came back and did it again, we did the poetry reading again. Unfortunately, that bar closed right before the next one was going to happen with COVID.
Gotcha. Because this was
Or right
2019.
after?
It started.
Yeah.
This says here
Yeah.
it started January 2019. So if you were coming back
Yeah.
again, COVID would have been.
We just done it, and then COVID happened. I'm pretty sure
Gotcha.
that's what happened.
Okay.
So I've been doing it still, but we haven't done the poetry event,
Okay.
which is a bit of a
Coming.
bummer.
Hey, you never know. It could still happen. Things seem
Although I think
somewhat
it was
stable.
very poorly attended. I don't know what
I don't know how much people want to see
the
poetry these
crossover of
days.
craft beer and poetry. Those just like missed the mark there.
You know what? You're ahead of your time. You know, that's all
Yeah,
you can say.
I
So,
usually am.
so this particular beer, from what just tasting it now and refreshing what a Solera is, I forgot the key part of it is you top that barrel up and then keep going.
Yeah.
This to me, because there's actually no real information on here, which is kind of cool. So it's like it tastes like sort of a straight up and down, farmhouse saison style beer. Doesn't taste like there's any adjuncts or anything. It's a lot of the flavors coming from the yeast.
Mhm.
That's accurate. Okay, good.
This is straight up. Yeah, there's no added flavors into this.
Okay.
If anything, this one comes across to me with kind of a buttery Chardonnay finish, and I can
Oh yeah.
feel it. And that's from the barrels, which like, I mean, Chardonnay's potent, especially California Chardonnays. Like those to be the second, but once it sits in there for obviously over 2 years, it really soaks in and adds in a very, I find, delightful mouthfeel. But I
Mm-hmm.
can see why some people are not into it, and it's something that doesn't come through in Lando's. But it does have some of the base Lando vibes. So this
Okay.
culture is now a mix of Um, it was a straight saison sour blend, and then the Limberlost culture from Sawdust City is in the
Mm.
barrel.
Mm.
So it's kind of a meshing of both Shortfinger and Sawdust to create
Amazing.
this at this point. Yeah.
Hmm. This is fascinating. I'm definitely it's like a lot softer as far as the carb than
Mhm.
Lando. Like you're saying, probably the barrels, the buttery Chardonnay finish. I'm absolutely getting that. I guess a lot of sort of like the white grapes and stone fruit.
Yeah.
Um, it's
There's a
like a
bit
little
of
bit.
herbal note in there, and coming through on the end, I get like it's not grassy, um, but it's
Hmm,
trying to put my finger on it right now. But I do get this like herb vibe near the finish that isn't coming through into bitterness, but much softer in the acidity. And that's
yes,
because this beer is now from 2019 to what are we, 2022?
22.
Like, this isn't exactly a fresh beer you're drinking. This came out of my cellar.
Right. Oh, right. So this is some special
These
shit
are
right
all,
here.
yeah, oh yeah. No one can get these beers because that's how short finger rolls. You'll never be able to
I
get
love
this.
it. Hey, let's promote the brewery, but yeah, you can't get any of this shit. But you
Yeah, I
can.
mean, you could get Landos, and so I do seller releases every once in a while.
I figured as
Um,
much
yeah,
with the
like
style that you're
we'll
doing.
do a
Yeah.
seller release for around Christmas again and stuff like that.
That's fun, man.
Um, yeah,
I like
but
that.
mostly the beers in the cellar, I'm just like, these are really fun beers that I loved and I enjoyed making. I liked how they came out, so then I hold on to them, and then if we do events or something's cool going on, I'll just go in the back room and go into the cellar and just be like, oh, I'm gonna crack this, and just share it with people who are there who I know appreciate what I'm doing. You know, like on Lando Day, if you hang out at Lando Day and show any interest in the project, I'm probably gonna come around with a magnum of Lando and be like, "You should try this one. You can't get it. You probably never had it. Yeah, no, you'll never get it again. Sorry."
So enjoy the shit. That's something
Yeah,
special, though, man. I mean, that's a unique thing that you're able to do because being the like it sounds like I guess we'll get into it some more, but like I was about to say the majority, but at least a serious portion of the beers that you're brewing is things you can sit on for a while,
hmm
which is very cool.
yeah. No, it's the running kind of joke is that I've put a date code for Lando at 29 years, 364 days. I haven't got there yet, but I'm like, hey, I think it'll still be good then.
I can't imagine why not. It's got a cork and a
Yeah,
cap.
yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm like,
We'll
fuck,
see.
man. Who knows? I guess you'll find out. That's the beauty of it all. So
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is fascinating. This is great. I even like it's got it's a lot more opaque. Obviously, Lando was
hmm
damn near clear. This is a lot more opaque. I imagine that's just due to the nature of the style.
You may have roused some of the sediment. That would be my guess.
Ooh.
Because if you look at mine,
Ah,
it's quite clear. Um,
do you know what? I must have. I'm an idiot with this stuff. I drink like I was saying earlier. I drink more. And just by nature of like IPAs come my way, and
yeah,
you just
yeah,
drink them first. So I remember I hadn't drank one of these for a while, and I had like it was a Durank because obviously in Montreal you can go to SAQ and you can just grab
yeah.
pretty fine. Like Dre Fontana's just sitting there almost at any SAQ, which is pretty crazy. And
hmm
I kind of regret not buying more before I left. But I had a Durank and I poured. I was sharing it with my girlfriend's cousin who lives here, and we were pouring it, and it was complete. It was like a cherry one or something, and it was completely like opaque red. And
Yeah.
my friend from Australia, of all places, messaged me. He was like, "Yo, what did you do?" I don't know. I just poured it. Did you pour the sediment? I'm like, yeah. You just arouse and put it in. He's like, you fucking idiot. Like, you're not supposed to do that. That's what you do with haze. I'm like, Because I'm so
Yeah.
used to making sure you get every drop of yeast from the New Englands that I forgot that the intention of
Yeah, you know what? It's that's an interesting point of like people don't necessarily know how to handle conditioned beers, and there's nothing wrong with drinking the beer the way it is. The
right.
yeast that you are consuming is not, it's not bad for you.
Okay.
You know, like in some, at some bars like that I was in, that I've gone to in Belgium, they will leave you the bottom of the bottle, which I often do for customers at Short Finger, and just say, if you would like, you can swirl up the bottom, drop the yeast cake in your glass. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make that decision for you. It's totally up to you. Some people like it, some people don't. Totally your call. Um, yeah, I usually leave the sediment behind personally. I just always have.
How much do you leave behind? Because when I was pouring it, I was like specifically because you kind of mentioned it earlier. I was
Yeah.
watching and I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure I'm good, but I'm kind of blocking the bottom, so I didn't really see. Like I left like a little bit in there.
Yeah, like I'd say like a finger
A
is, I
finger.
looks like you probably dumped a bit of sediment in there. And then it's also the how you're handling it prior too, right?
I had it
If you
in.
like,
I really tried to not. I had it in the fridge upstairs. I just brought it down
yeah.
and popped it right in the cooler. I wasn't. It wasn't turned upside down or anything like
Oh
that.
yeah. So
But
you just got a little bit of the yeast at the end. There's not, like I said,
nothing
nothing
wrong
wrong
with
with
it.
that.
I'm
Yeah.
totally. I want to respect the traditions and do that. I swear I saw, and you mentioned that you leave the thing at the bottom. Isn't there like a thing where it's almost like you get the beer, but then you can kind of like pour the yeast into like a shot glass, and you can have the. Is that a thing?
You
Am
can,
I
yeah,
thinking
I
correct?
feel like I've heard that before. Never
Yeah.
done it. Also, don't want to do it. I feel like that's a sure way to shit your pants. Like a really,
Okay. Why is that? Is it just that yeast can
oh, just like a like real yeast shot like
concentrate?
that. Like, yeah, like I don't know if that's like what that's gonna do to
Optimal.
your stomach exactly. Just here you go, have some yeast.
Doesn't sound the funnest. Okay, so that's why mine was like that. Okay, I was wondering. I wasn't sure if it was just like the Solera that had influenced that, or
Yeah,
maybe I got
yeah,
a little heavy-handed there. Okay, beautiful. Um, I love it. I feel like we're really starting to get like a bit of a really great picture of what's going on, at least with your barrel program. I want to just
mhm,
switch gears for a second. Let's start. I want to hear how you personally discovered craft beer, got into beer, and then how that led to the brewery and the business as a whole to to kick off.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I have loved beer for like as long as I can remember. Like, just really been into beer. The first beer I ever had was like at my family cottage back when I was like 8. My dad let me have some of his beer, and it was like Upper Canada Dark. I
Ooh, I
remember
remember.
like,
That's he was ahead of his time drinking that stuff, eh?
yeah, like this is like
Love
back
that.
when like George Eagleson was probably brewing there. I had no idea. He touched my life back then. Um, but I remember like being like not loving it because you're a kid, but also being like, oh, I do like this. And then like in university, I kind of got into homebrew, and we were like throwing keggers at my house all the time and big parties. And I would go to the homebrew store in Peterborough. I was going to Trent and like get homebrew kegs from this guy and like serve all this homebrew at these keggers that we are throwing. And like, it was really terrible beer, to be honest. It was like just atrocious. Um,
What
my palate was
styles?
not so rough. Sorry.
What styles were they?
Oh, it was like dirty, dirty lager.
Okay.
Like the worst lager you've ever had in your life.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Like,
those days, what cheap is what is
yeah,
the number one factor.
exactly. It was all about a good time.
Yeah.
So that kind of like was sort of the like dirty background behind it. And once I got out of university, I was working at the beer store doing logistics, and really hated my fucking life. Like, was not into it at all. But I was like, I want to be in beer, and like this was like the first job that came up, and I was like, well, I have to pay rent, so I need to get this job, right? And it served me well enough from there. And after I think 2 years, I ended up starting on at Great Lakes. I think that
Nice.
was late 2010 or early 2011. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly. But it was right around when we were doing the initial launch of Crazy Canuck. It would have been 2010 because I came on right like we're wrapping up the Winter Olympics and that launched that beer. So we were kind of cleaning that up and putting it into cans at that time.
Very cool.
And being at Great Lakes was awesome. And at that point, I was not brewing. I was doing LCPO and all their retail management,
Okay.
um, which was kind of a funny role. And when I look back at it, I'm just like, oh, I'm so terrible at that job. Like, why would they have hired me for that? But like, I did a good job nonetheless. Like, and I got to the point where I could manage this program enough that I started brewing on the pilot system regularly, hanging out with Mike Lackey, and really, really got into homebrew through that. And back we were doing the 25th anniversary for Great Lakes at that time and working on the rebrand, putting out the Tank 10 series and that whole monster that has turned into kind of what Great Lakes is now. And I was like, we got to get into some barrel aging stuff. And I took one of the company vans and grabbed my buddy because no one else wanted to go with me and drove to Kentucky and filled the back of this like cube van with like freshly emptied like Buffalo Trace barrels and everything I could get my hands on. And it was a hilarious trip and a complete disaster because at the time I had no idea how to cross a border after purchasing something for a business, and my
Ooh.
boss didn't tell me. And I got to the border and was like, "Yeah, I got these, blah blah blah," and they were just like, "What do you mean? Like you have no paperwork for any of this?" You're like, it's like, no, what do you want? Here's the invoice. I'll pay some tax, whatever. Anyways, it was a bit of a disaster, and like 6 hours later, whatever, I got out
Jeez.
of there.
The
But
worst.
that was kind of like my first step into barrel aging and working on the imperial stouts that were released there. And then I got down to California, got my hands on consecration, supplication, the Russian River sours and their barrel aged stuff. And right there, it's just like, oh, okay. Like, I really like what's going on here. And then from there, got into lambics and like really opened the sour beer end of things for me. And that was kind of the point where I was like, yeah, hey, like, Mike, we should really do this. And they'd played around with some sour stuff at the time. I don't know if uh, there was a beer that I don't think was ever actually released at Great Lakes at the time, but it was called Baby Vomit Supreme. And it was the fucking worst sour beer I still have ever had. And I have had some terrible sour beers. I own a homebrew shop and get a lot of homebrew dropped off. And that is
Love.
still the worst sour beer I've ever had. It was butyric acid
That's what it's called.
to the point that when we were doing BJCP testing and like going through and like building up to do the exam, we used that as the like benchmark to off flavor. Like I brought a bunch of it for the like group that we were like studying with, and they were like, "Here is butyric acid," and like, ew, oh, it just
Ah,
stinks. It was so bad. Anyways,
ugh. I've had it
um,
before. It's gross. It's really
yeah.
bad.
And so from there, I wanted to go a sour route, and I wasn't in a position at Great Lakes. They were letting me do a lot of the pilot stuff and playing around with different brews. I was getting really into homebrew, but with my current role, it didn't make sense, and they didn't want to do sour beers there, which I don't blame them in the slightest. Like they have
It's not really their
a
vibe.
pretty no, it's not in their wheelhouse, and they are a clean brewery that is doing huge production and packaging going to the LCBO. Letting me dick around with a bunch of sour barrels and stuff in their back room, probably a bad idea. So that didn't fly, and I kind of was like, well, you know what? After a few years, I was like, I just want to brew and make these beers that I want to make, and
Mm.
I switched over from Great Lakes, was working for a Belgian importer, dealing mostly with Trappist. And at the time, my plan was to move to Belgium and go work for a brewery there. And I was kind of like just trying to build some contacts and decided to just go for it instead. Didn't go to Belgium. And I mean, I go and visit there whenever I can, and started the homebrew shop in 2015 because I figured the window on that was kind of closing in terms of where it was going to be, the location, and just where the market was at, and trying to get established as more and more breweries were popping up. And Shortfinger was never really supposed to be this homebrew shop that it turned into. It was always supposed to be a funky brewery. I just used the homebrew shop as a way to start the brewery because I am very poor. I have no money. So like it was one of those like we started the brewery on a very small budget. And so I was able to build a following of homebrewers in the area here in Kitchener and take the money that I was making from homebrewing and put it into investing into the brewery and putting those pieces together. But a big part of why we were doing the barrel aged and all this was also because like I welded our whole brew system with the welder around the corner from us, and put it together. It is janky and direct fire, and like it is not a fancy push button system. I am making really delicate and interesting different beers on the jankiest like jacked up homebrew system you have ever seen. We didn't start doing loggers until 2020 because I finally had enough money to buy a glycol system. It's
Mm.
not that I don't like loggers. It was
They are a whole
I'm
thing.
like, yeah, I am like just using ambient for my fermentation, and I had this little glycol unit that was on this like skateboard that I'd slide up to tanks and like jack into the ports and turn it on and just crash tanks. That was the only temperature control we had. It was like I can crash this tank now. So it was a very grassroots and slow build up. Like when we started the homebrew shop 2015 in my basement in Waterloo, it was all online. And when you went down into, I had like a split, semi split or whatever it's called. So it's 4 levels, but like it's all half levels. And in
Hmm.
the basement, you walk down into it, and it was like a brewery's like grain storage room. There was like 200 bags of grain in this basement, and like freezers full of hops, and like my office was just homebrew supplies all over the place, and we're just shipping and like letting people pick up. And then we eventually found a location which took longer than I wanted, um, and then got the brewery going. But the hoops we had to jump through to get the brewery going with the municipality took another, I think, 2 years. Like it was
Jeez.
2015. We didn't launch a beer until 2018.
Fuck. When did
And
you start
then the
applying? I guess you started. You said 2016. You started applying for.
yeah, 2016 we started putting the pieces together.
That's a long time,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. And I look back and I'm like, yeah, it was still a lot of fun. And in that 2 years, that's when I worked on brewing Lando. All I did
Mm.
for those 2 years was brew saisons, blend them, and figure out the components and how I wanted this beer to taste.
Hmm.
And still to this day, Lando Batch A, which is the original batch that we released, is one of my favorite beers we've ever done. I
Did
think
you
it's lovely. Like it,
did you keep a library of that one? Good.
It's at my house.
Love it. So that was, and then so you were working on it. I mean, I guess that's getting the yeast culture started, perfecting the recipe. What was the first beer you guys dropped? Was it Lando?
I think it was Lando A, that first batch. So It Goes, which was a barrel-aged Goza, and G Lightfoot, which was a whiskey barrel-aged sour.
Nice.
I had a phase where I was really into Gordon Lightfoot. I don't know why. We were just like, yeah, I'm gonna name this after him. Like, whatever.
Why not?
Yeah, who knows? Not very punk rock. Gordon Lightfoot is not punk rock.
I actually don't know who is that.
He's like Canadiana. You don't need to know him.
That's probably why. Didn't grow up
He's
around
the
it. Okay.
Edmund Fitzgerald guy. That song about the sinking ship.
All of it sounds familiar. I've absolutely heard the name, and I've heard the name of that as well. I'm sure.
Real Canadiana.
Super stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of like Canadian stuff that's like just here. There's a lot of things that we did get growing up, but then there's like some specific stuff.
Yeah.
Got to put the pieces together. Okay, sick. So 2018 was the real launch of the brewery. So the business is 7 years old, but the brewery is like 4.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
The brewery was summer 2018. And then the tasting room took me a while to put the pieces together, and I think it was January 2019.
Okay.
So we were going about a year before COVID.
Okay.
I think we launched with a pulp release, which is the collab we do with Barncat.
Barncat. That's a collab.
Yeah.
No shit. Okay. Interesting. I always heard about that beer, and I always saw dudes out that way going to the brewery on the day or whatever brew day, and they get a whole bunch of locals that are just fans and just stripping oranges or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, that was me, Jeremy, and Matt originally in my kitchen.
Damn. And that's a straight New England IPA, right? That's not anything funky or anything. Okay.
Double IPA with clementines.
Clementines, that's what it is. Okay, amazing. And I remember
people loved it. Like,
growler only back then, right? Like I heard it from Montreal. I always saw the people I followed like losing their shit over it, and because it wasn't packaged, the only way you're going to get it is to go to the brewery, and it wasn't even feasible to ship a growler to anybody. So you had to just go to Cambridge.
Yeah. And that was before I had my license, so we were doing it all at Barncat, and then we started switching it back and forth and doing 2 versions of it. But I mean, the thing is, the hazy like IPA crowd, they're not really into short finger. Like the pulp is such a funny one for us. For like, it was a earlier beer that we did. And I was like, I'm not gonna be doing that. Like I'll play around with it, but like my focus is gonna be somewhere else.
Gotcha. Are you still doing it though? As to this day, like, do you still do it every year? No.
Actually, I reached out to Jeremy and Matt last year, and I was like, "Hey, things are weird. Do you want to try and pull this off or not?" Like, and they're like, "Nah, not really." I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to hang out and zest clementines with you for 5 hours either, you jerks."
You pieces of shit. Fuck.
Yeah. It is a lot of work.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's a lot of work for sure.
Okay, that's fascinating, man.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that. So then, all right. So your aim for the brewery, like you were saying, is primarily the barrel-aged sours, and this is my segue. So we're at the just over an hour part now. So we're going to move on to something a little different. So the first batch of stuff that you sent me, we had that one we talked about, Wash, which I think out of all the beers, arguably might have been my favorite one. Like I really love what you did. It was just it was this perfect. It was kind of like just a dry hop pale ale with this little like touch of, like you said, Brett heavy, this little bit of funk in there that just works so well. So it shows obviously that is a skill set that you have within the brewery. Like if you want to do that type of stuff, I would probably categorize that under some sort of like like funky, hazy product. This bad boy that we're about to go, if I'm not mistaken, we're doing that one next.
Yep.
Is this a straight up hazy like pale ale?
Yeah. This is just like a clean pale ale.
A clean one, okay.
Yeah. It's hazy nano IPA. I think we call it a nano IPA.
Okay,
A
4%.
little IPA apparently.
Little IPA.
Yeah.
Which is look, you got Zaka and Idaho 7. Great hot choice right there. Love Idaho 7. Woo!
So do I. So do I.
When you said clean, oh, you meant clean because it's not sour.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
not sour. There's no bugs in that.
Okay.
So
I completely took that as something different. I thought you said clean. I thought you meant like clear. But that makes sense because you're a sour brewery, so that makes complete sense.
Yeah, I have to let people know when I'm like, oh, hey, guess what? I didn't put something weird in this.
Hey man, that's your signature. I love the branding on this one. This was, once again, you were talking before, you're not even that much of a fan of Star Wars, but this beer is called BabeeYoda.
This was, honestly, I was trying to get a cease and desist from at the time.
Did you get it?
Like, I really was. I did not. I was really disappointed.
Damn it.
Yeah, like, I had heard they're like, really, their lawyers were really heavy-handed, and I was like, oh, I'd love to be able to post a cease and desist from Disney. So, and I was also really into the Mandalorian. At the time. Yeah,
I still haven't seen it. I heard it's great.
I liked it. It was like a space western. I thought it was super
space
cool.
Western?
I think it was the best thing. It was like the best thing that Star Wars did in a long time. So what's kind of interesting about this beer, and part of the head on this,
it's beautiful, bro.
This is a raw pale ale or little IPA. So what I do with this is I'm not I'm sure you're familiar with this.
Yeah, I've heard of
but I don't boil it. I bring it up to 85 degrees Celsius and then add the hops in and do a whirlpool, just kind of pasteurizing. And there's a lot of oats in it, and that kind of builds this head and just builds all these proteins. It's a really lovely beer. It also gives it a different mouthfeel, I find, than when you do a full boil on beers. I've had a few discussions with the guys at like Third Moon about this. We've done different collabs together too, and I think Jim thinks it's weird that I don't boil a lot of my hoppy beers, but I really like the way it tastes, and I find because it's not my focus, where I'm not like, if you show up at Short Finger, you are just here to drink hoppy beer. Like, I usually only have one hoppy beer on the board. But I like to make it taste, and I think we have like this Short Finger flavor. Like, people really love True Believer, our pale ale, but I always say it, like, it doesn't really taste like most other hazy pale ales you have. There's just something about the process, our house, and like kind of the same way that Great Lakes has a flavor. I think a house flavor comes through in the pale ales in a way that I really do like, and I love drinking pale ales. Like, I don't just drink sour beer. I love drinking all sorts of beer. It's just the same way I don't just listen to punk music. I fucking love Kelly Clarkson.
I respect it.
Yeah. Like,
you got to be into a bit of everything.
I can't just listen to NoFX all the time. Come on.
No. Aren't they the band? I'm a hip hop dude, so I don't really have much context. But I remember when I was in high school, dudes used to have. Is that the album where dudes are fucking a sheep on their cover?
Heavy Petting.
There you go. It's called Heavy Petting. Yo, I love heavy petting as a term. It is undervalued and it's brilliant. Should we call the episode Heavy Petting?
Yeah, we probably
oh, you're killing me, bro. I'm running down. We'll see how I feel when we do it. But that's...
we'll see how that feels.
Oh, fuck me. Okay. Okay, so this is fantastic. Their head is out of control. That pillow, stunning. The nose is like, I feel like you have really unique. I really like your tasting notes. What are you getting from this?
So on this one, I am getting like straight up citrus, lemon for sure. But I'm always, it's kind of that same thing. And I think on one of the one you had with Bellwoods a little while ago,
For link up.
it was mentioned dropping Simcoe into every hoppy beer just so it tastes like an IPA.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I do something similar like that. I use a lot of Simcoe, but I also do that with Idaho 7 as Azaka kind of often, just to add in this little bit of dankness in with the tropical fruits to make me feel like I'm getting that like hop bite, but still trying to keep it soft, especially because all of our beers, you'll find, are dry.
Okay,
Like
I'm
this is
definitely
not,
noticing
I
that.
mean, this is not a big beer, like it's only 4%, but it's very dry. Even our IPAs, on the occasion that I do it, um, come across somewhere between that like hazy East Coast meets West Coast vibe, and trying
Yes.
to find that spot where like the touch of bitterness is there, because I really personally like it. I do not like sweet things
Okay.
very much. So per usual, I'm kind of just brewing to my own tastes. But with the size of brewery we are, like it's not
You,
like I'm brewing to the masses and masses. So we kind of have this base style and taste that I think people are like eventually they get into. One of my good buddies loves double IPAs. Like he loved milk, which is probably the sweetest beer I've ever released. Ever. I was like, this is crazy. I don't even know. Like, I think I've had one pint of it. It was like,
that's it.
oh, it's so sweet. Um, but he was like, you have ruined me for everybody else's pale ales and like IPA stuff, because I now have a taste for this lighter, drier, slightly bitter, and again, like it's all about balance,
Mhm.
finish to a beer. And I
Your subtle
cannot
business.
stress enough the like how much I think drying out a beer nicely helps balance it out, keep it refreshing. Where if I have a whole bunch of residual sugars, I find I can't drink as much of it. It doesn't, it coats your palate differently. So I don't drink a lot of double IPAs. I know that's kind of
No, I'm with you.
you like
No.
the like. I thought you really liked
Do you,
bigger beers.
do you know what's interesting? I've moved away from. Do you know what? I moved away from it in the time since I started. Since I had took the break on the podcast, which is hilarious. So I'll go into Durand in here in Hamilton. That's where I picked up milk. It's Chris
Yeah.
is a legend. I'll intentionally avoid double IPAs. I bought milk because I wanted to. I used to have an obsession with lactose. Me and my friend Nate, who writes for BAOS, we had a Twitter account called Team Lactose, and it was more just to piss off the purists because people got really mad about lactose
Yeah.
previously. Now they get mad about smoothies and shit.
Yep.
And I was fascinated that I know Mark not well, but I know Mark at Sidewalk, and I was like, sick. I love that you collab with them. I really, which we're going to get into. I really enjoyed the video of like pouring into the cereal and eating that. I loved it.
Yeah.
So I was like, I need to fucking try this beer. I got it, and that was an outlier for me personally, because I'm finding that like I would rather. I imagine you align with me here. Go through volume.
Mhm.
In an evening and try a whole bunch of different stuff. Not because I'm a fucking like I want to be pounding beers, but I just would rather try a bunch of different stuff rather than have like 2 double IPAs and go to bed. That's kind of
Oh,
where
I want to try beer. I want to drink a few, and I don't want to feel like shit in the morning either.
And I found
No,
as well. Tell me what you.
I got stuff to do.
Yeah, well, exactly. There's I'm not to be. I'm getting older. I'm in my early 40s now, so I'm not trying to fucking be. I'm not 21 anymore. Like, bounce back like we used to. But I found that
Yep.
a lot of breweries now, and I'm seeing this in it. Like, if I tried this beer blind, I would never have guessed it's 4%. Absolutely not. This is an exceptional body. There's tons of flavor in here. I'm getting that chalky dryness, like you mentioned, that I would get in much bigger beers. And I found that a lot of the haze that I'm drinking, since we're in this category, a lot of breweries now are starting to nail the lower ABVs that have very similar characteristics to the bigger ones. So if I go and drink a 6% IPA, then drink an 8, the difference isn't massive. It used to
tell
be.
the difference. Yeah.
You might not be able to if you did it blind. So I'm like, well, why am I going to go and spend the extra money and then the extra? It's not even the money I don't care about. It's the bandwidth, because I'm not a beast. Some people can pound them. I'm not that.
Can only drink so much.
Can only drink so much, right? And I would rather drink. When I go into Durand, I'll just be like, I don't even really look at the double IPA section because he separates it by style. I don't even look at it.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm like, yeah, that's the move. I really wish it was ready in time. But Catherine the Mild is a dark mild that we do, which is,
I love them.
So not something we should be doing and doing so well. But I make it for my my wife, Kat, and it is just an English mild, and it's the only English beer we do. It's 3.5%, and whenever it is on tap, that is the beer I'm drinking.
Yeah. Hell
like
yeah.
I like in the afternoon on a Friday, people are in the tasting room. It's like you got to chat with all these people, and I'm like, I had 4 pints, and luckily, like, I can bike home easily. But I'm like, 4 pints of 3.5%.
It's not touching the sides.
Dark mild, perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what I want. And we have a following of people now who actually are into the lower ABVs, because we've been doing them for a while. Actually, I think our description still online is mixed fermentation brewery with like small, like low ABV pale ales or something like that. But like we have been doing lower ABV, like 4% BabeeYodas. Midnight Bike Club is another beer that I do that is specifically brewed it so I could drink it while I was biking, stop in the park in Victoria Park in Kitchener here, have another beer in the park, and then bike home. And just yeah, it's perfect. It doesn't need to be 7% as far as I'm concerned, but and I think people are coming around to lower ABV beers more and more.
I've had you mentioned this, so I know you worked with Third Moon. I was chatting with Chris recently, and he was saying to me, and I guess you can tell by looking at, and this also probably comes. I was talking to Troy at Badlands too. If you look at their releases, they're not dropping. And I mentioned them because obviously double IPAs are kind of what those guys are known for. They're not dropping them like they used to. And Chris specifically was saying, he's like, people don't want them as much anymore. So I think what they've done is worked on their IPAs, which sit at 6.5 typically, and then their 5%-ish pale ales, and improve the body to the point where the difference, like we were saying before, from their IPAs to the double is so marginal. Like I said, I don't really even look at it, and maybe I'm missing out on some great beers, but I'm just like, I tend to just let them sit, and then they'll be like, oh fuck, this is 4 or 5 weeks old now. Then you're missing out on the quality of what it's supposed to be, because I'm reaching for the ABV that we've been drinking this evening around the fives. Five or six is enough for me. And this, like, honestly, bro, this is amazing. This is just incredible, and the body is, it has no business being this. This creamy. I mean, it's the oats, it's the raw boil that you're talking about. So it's, I'm just completely satiated, and I feel like, that's what he was saying, and this is what I want to get your opinion on. So Chris specifically thinks that a lot of it came from the last 2 years, where people were at home. They kind of went a little crazy to begin with. Everyone's dropping all their fucking money on beer, and then drinking every day, and all of a sudden everyone's got a few extra pounds and not feeling too good about themselves. Their wallet's a little lighter, so they're like, well, I want lighter beers. I mean, I think that partially contributed to the rise of something like seltzers, which wasn't huge here previously, prior to the pandemic, I would argue. I used to always go to Vermont because we were right there. My boy there was always drinking, so he's a beer guy too, but he always had seltzers on deck, and we didn't really have them up here. Like, I think even before White Claw was either a major thing or before it was 2019. And seeing that happen, because they're like what 4% or something, 5%, and they're like 50 calories or something, or 100 calories tops. So people are like, I'm going for that. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like there's a bit of a trend. Have you noticed that trend from you? I mean, I know you're not making 10% IPAs and shit, but like, have you noticed any trend by your customers?
It's kind of funny. So you had milk, and we released that 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I think
About
so.
that? Yeah, sounds about right.
And we still have a little bit in the fridge.
That's not. Is that normal or is that selling pretty quick?
Oh, I would have thought that was gone. So
Okay.
the week before, I released Fresh Hell, our, I think it's 5% Munich Helles Lager,
Ooh.
dry, bitter. We got like, if there was any left, I would have sent you some of that. I had planned to. I was like, yeah, we do lagers too. People like them. It sold out in, I think it was 7 days, 8 days.
Wow.
All gone. Draft and fucking cans.
Jeez.
And that's bars who want it. Like we have like a local bar that every time I drop that beer, they're like, "Yeah, I need 6 cases as soon as you have it." I'm like,
Like, all right.
"Okay, yeah, sure." Which we don't normally get because we have all these funky sour beers, and people are like, "Can I do a half case? I really just want a half case." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, yeah,
Sure.
yeah, you don't want to. Yeah, you're worried about the sour, okay, yeah." But I mean, lagers versus sour, like the amount of people who drink them, I
Of
totally
course.
understand it.
Yeah.
Time and
Interesting.
place.
Absolutely.
And milk didn't move as quickly as I thought it would. The other one that didn't move the way I expected to was last year. I did a collab with the Third Moon Boys called Beach Boys,
Okay.
and it was in our Darkest Timeline series, which is this whole like offshoot brand where I've like essentially I allow myself to make all these weird bigger beers that I would never make. It's like essentially it's the Darkest Timeline from yeah. Anyways,
Sci-fi. I bet.
and
I've
yeah,
heard that before.
it's
Darkest Timelines.
Community. It's not sci-fi. It's
No,
Community.
the TV show
The TV show
with Donald
Yeah,
Glover in them. I've
yeah,
totally
with Donald
seen.
Glover
Okay,
because I love Donald Glover so
he's the
much.
man. He's the fucking man.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we released this Pina Colada Imperial Stout, which was like actually was so much better than it had any right of being. Like I was like, I fucking nailed that. Like that was
Hell
really good.
yeah.
But we released it in August, and I was like, yeah, we're gonna do this Imperial Stout, this Beach Boys thing, and like, and there was a handful of people who came in repeatedly and were just like, oh my god, this is so good. But I think it was around for over a month,
Okay, and that's a
which
long
is like
time.
the longest I think like, or maybe it was maybe it was like a month and a half. It was like the longest any of our Darkest Timelines had stuck around to date, and I was like, that's really weird. So I do agree. There's a shift from the high alcohol. People are not necessarily going towards it in the same way.
Interesting. Even with the
That was a
pastry.
long story to say that.
No, not at all. It was valuable points. I wonder if there's a different. I mean, it sounds like that's a really good analogy as far as like people moving to the lower ABVs. But I wonder if the pastry, because I feel like the pastry fans or like the big stout fans, I feel like they were all, it's like I feel like you could align them with like the they remind me of the Quebec folks. Like there's people in Quebec that were just fucking like heavy into bourbon barrel aged stouts and like all the wild stuff. They were like a type, and they still are. Here I think they're few and further between though in comparison between the two.
One of Mike, who runs the homebrew shop, he's a manager and also does a lot of different things at the brewery. He every time we do one of these beers, he's like, Rob, like you have been fostering funky sour followers and low ABV beer drinkers. When they show up and you have released a double IPA with lactose, they're like, ew, gross. Why did he do that?
That completely makes
like,
sense.
yeah, like I'm like, oh yeah, I did do that. Like absolutely. But I mean,
But that
I
was
like to have fun.
that was a sick beer, bro. Like I knew because I'd had Wash and what there was. I think Aliens Do Exist. It was another one that was a great
Aliens
pale ale.
exist.
Aliens Exist, and they were like both lower ABV pale ales, but it like basically what I gathered from what I tried was you do because I don't think we really had the conversation as far as you're like, hey, this is what we do, blah blah blah. Like we just say, hey man, yeah, let's get some stuff, like boom boom. So obviously I'm checking you guys out a little bit more and trying to figure out what you're all about. And I was like, okay, cool. So it looks like you do all these real cool, funky barrel aged sours, but you're also very, very skilled at doing these, pale ales, or whether they got bread or something else in it. So when I saw the double IPA with lactose, it didn't think was like, oh, that's soft brand. I was like, oh, I need to try that. And it didn't disappoint in any shape or form. One of my favorite things about that beer, by the way, was it was in a short can.
Oh,
because
yeah.
it
Absolutely.
made
Short
the
cans all the way.
short. I imagine you don't do tall cans, eh?
Nope.
Nope. Love
Never
it.
wanted to do them. And I don't know what's wrong with Ontario. Like, our event in the summer is called the Summer Short Can.
Yeah.
And I
Oh, that's
actively
why.
look for short cans.
That makes
I
complete
love
sense.
short cans, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to take a quick leak, bud.
Go
Sorry.
for it. I
Is
got.
that
I got
cool?
this.
Yep.
Of course, I got it
Okay.
covered. I'll keep them going. But yeah, guys. So the milk was basically a double IPA collaboration with Mark at Sidewalk Beer Shop, which is based out of the Princess Cafe. I think it's in Kitchener. I haven't been, but I know Mark through Bebo at Third Moon, and great dude. And I want to talk to Rob in a sec about the social media stuff that they've been doing. But yeah, that beer was it was really killing. I feel like lactose IPAs that aren't milkshake IPAs, I'm about to say are hit and miss. I don't know if they're hit and miss, but they're not super common these days. I imagine most of y'all probably aren't drinking a shit ton of those. But it had the perfect body, and the lactose wasn't overly sweet. It was present, you could tell, but it wasn't ridiculous. It was super hazy, super fruity and tropical, and it was perfect to me because I drank it out of this small glass, and it was exactly all I needed of an 8% double IPA. I was just espousing the beauty that was milk, and
Well, thank you.
I just really enjoyed that beer, man. Like, I just thought it was fantastic, and because it was an 8%er that I might have otherwise postponed, I was like, nah, fuck that, we're doing this, and it was great. I'm glad I drank it fresh. I drank it within a day or two of grabbing it, and it was perfect because it didn't. I was like, oh man, I got this pint of 8%. I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I can have an extra beer after this. That's going to be the end of my night. That's usually how I'm looking at it. I got a few in the fridge now, and I'm worried about. I was like, am I going to even get to these fucking things? So no, I think it was really smart doing it in the short can, and particularly if your fan base, like you were saying, have been more cultivated towards the lower ABV stuff. Perhaps it's an easier sell for them if it's in a shorter can, so it's like not as much of a commitment.
Yeah, and we do singles on those. Anything in the darkest timeline as well, rather than the 4-pack. So like if you show up at Short Finger, BabeeYoda's 4-packs. Like
I see why.
It's just 4-packs.
You don't really want one of these.
You don't want
a
it?
bunch.
Don't buy it. I don't give a shit. Like
you want a bunch of
else will buy
these.
it.
This is like I specifically didn't. I wanted to drink it the last because I think it arrived on Tuesday, and I was like, it took some willpower not to drink one beforehand because I wanted to have all of these with you for the first time while we were hanging out.
Right,
it's more fun for me to do that, and it's perfect because I was like, this is amazing. Because I always start off with the crispy, and then you move on to the rest, and I'm like, this is exactly what I would like to start on. Like the first beer of the night. It's actually technically it probably even come before the crispy boy. Then it's a lower ABV. This is perfect. I can't imagine you only wanting one of something like these. These are something you want to kick around.
Yep,
for sure.
It's on the with the darkest timeline, the milk kind of thing. It's that funny. We built up this audience of people, like I said, who want to not necessarily go to the hazy side of things, but I do enjoy playing with these different beers that I normally wouldn't do, and so that's why the collab milk, which was originally supposed to be called milk, was a bad choice, but we vetoed the negative part of that. But I think with Short Finger, I'm always trying to just promote people to try different things because we do such a vast array of things and beers that you wouldn't necessarily think of as regularly beer, and like falling into a lactose double IPA, which wouldn't be in my wheelhouse, but like I'm gonna try and like I'm not gonna release shit. Like if I'm gonna release it, it's gonna be good, and like it may have Short Finger's twist on it, which may not be to your liking. That's what I say. Like I promise I've made good beer for you. You may not like the style or how I've interpreted it, but I promise it is not bad.
I can
And I
vouch
think
for
that
that.
is something that not most, a good chunk of breweries can't always say, unfortunately, in Ontario specifically, with the amount of breweries and just a lot of the stuff that's going out. There's a ton of really good beer. I do want to also preface and say that I'm like always super impressed with, but there's also a lot of low lane stuff that I'm like, Jesus, like who fucking let this out of your brewery?
Do you think it's because of the need to like constantly drop something new for people every week, and it's just a matter of, you know what I mean? Like
This
there's
week
no
I
quality
dropped,
control.
this week I dropped two beers, and I'm constantly rotating through, but like I've kind of got a wheelhouse of stuff we do. So I get the pressure to do that, but I also don't think that's a reason to release bad, like, or beer that is
Subpar.
questionable.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
fair. I
yeah. I mean,
always, yeah, this is something that people talk about a bunch. It's an interesting conundrum being a brewery in this day and age of people being, the ticker culture through Untapped, and people just always wanting what's new and
mhm.
feeling that pressure to do it all the time. And then, with the beer industry, it's had a bit of a rough run the last couple of years. So dropping, or no, not dropping, like say like draining a batch of beer that might not be completely up to standard isn't always in the financial best interests of a company.
Oh
So
yeah,
sometimes people are like, well, look, we're going to have to put our reputation on the line right now because it's either that or, we might have
yep.
had to make payroll this month or something like that. So, I mean, like, it might not be optimal. I do get it, but yeah, it's.
It is super tough, but on the flip side of that, I will say that I don't think the quality of your beer matters nearly as much as it used to. Um, I think that an image, a brand, a name, whatever it is, like there's all these additional components, even just a vibe at your tasting room that people like makes up for a lot of flaws in the core of what your business might be, which is making beer.
Mhm.
Um, Nowadays, you need to have like the full package to be successful, and your beer is just one of those pieces that, like, I just don't believe the quality is where it should necessarily be in the
Right.
importance level.
That's fair. It's
Yeah.
such a, yeah. I know it's easy to talk about it from my spot as someone who doesn't have, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on the line, and that you guys do have. So it's, I guess everyone chooses the way that they approach it and how much of their brand they're willing to risk by releasing something. Maybe
Hmm.
that doesn't. I'm going to replace the camera battery there. That might not have, you know, hit the mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing there. Yeah,
I mean, you're talking to a guy who regularly pours barrels of beer down the drain that he's sat on for like 2 years. Or like, nope, this turned to shit. Let it sit for too long, and like it's painful.
I
Like
can
it
imagine.
it
I mean, it's
sucks.
painful, like to physically have to do that. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, you throwing, that's a lot of work, money. What happened there? Here we go.
you're
Um,
back.
I'm back. Yeah, like, yeah, it's tough, man. You guys are in a really tough position as a business these days for
Yeah,
what you
it,
have to
it is a
do.
hard go, and like I don't really want to shit on anyone too much or get too negative on the what's going on. Like that's it's not exactly fun, but I would like it is a hard go out there these days, and I it feels like there's a lot of small breweries that uh, tasting room culture has not bounced back to what it was.
That's a good
And like
point.
we feel it. And from talking to a lot of the breweries in Cambridge, like I ran into Jeremy earlier this week, and it was like, yeah, the summer was really slow. We just didn't have as many people coming through, these kind of things, and like the reverence guys, and this and that, and watching what people are doing, and the amount of breweries now who are doing trivia nights and the shit like that. And you're like, yeah, like people are like adjusting to try and get people coming out again, and just like fighting that like change from COVID again. Like
Hmm.
just another shift of like things are not the same as they used to be.
No.
And I found the same thing with short finger. What worked before does not work now.
In what sense?
Um, like the homebrew shop does not sustain the way it does now. People buy online, and their fundamental buying habits have changed because of COVID. And yes, we do have an online store that you can buy your stuff through, but people are ingrained on Amazon now to just like, oh, I'm going to look on here. Oh, it's going to show up tomorrow. So if you were like sitting in your bed on Sunday night and wanted to buy some homebrew something, like equipment mostly, you could order it and it'd be on your doorstep Monday afternoon, probably.
Hmm.
If you ordered from Short Finger, it'd probably be cheaper, and no one would get that order picked until Tuesday morning, because that's when we open up again, and then that order would be picked up Wednesday morning, maybe Tuesday night, but be on your doorstep Wednesday. Versus, like
I
this,
get
like
it.
all these slight shifts that have happened, and what people's expectations, and just like it's this weird change that I'm seeing as someone who kind of does retail and does these weird niche beers. And yeah, like it's a different world.
I couldn't agree more. As you were
Yeah.
saying that, I'm thinking about my own habits, and we didn't really order online as much as now. It's like a second nature. It's like every
Yeah.
time we go out to a store, I'm like, why are we here? We could just done this online. Like
and
it's,
and that's the one thing I'll say, like what I think is hurting at least me and probably a lot of breweries is short fingers an experience.
right.
You come down to it, and it's a dirty warehouse with like a vibe. Like it's got a real vibe. And like that's why, like, I'm like, we're Kitchener's only sci-fi punk brewery. And I swear it is true. And if you show up, you will understand what's going on, especially if you show up and we're doing like a punk show or like some event. But it's yeah, the retail side in particular has been much tougher. People
Hmm.
aren't coming out in the same way.
Interesting. Have online orders increased?
Yeah,
Okay.
online orders have increased, but like it doesn't make up for the vibe and the relationship I can build with a community, which homebrewing in particular should be a
Requires.
community of coming in, chatting with you, talking about your beer, what you're making, oh, where do you need help, what advice are you looking for, and this whole experience versus just going online and being like, oh yeah, I just need this stainless to steel dip tube, buying it,
Mm,
instead of walking into the
interesting.
homebrew shop, having a discussion with me, knowing who I am, me knowing what you're brewing next, all these components that make a community. And that's what has really disappeared from COVID, is the community itself. As far as, I mean, this
Interesting.
is my take on it, like looking out into it.
No, this is fascinating to hear because I hadn't really thought about that from like qualitatively or whatever. Like talking to people, there was a excitement and a readiness to get the fuck back to normal life
Mm-hmm.
earlier this year, say like from the spring. Something that I hadn't seen before that I'd noticed in Ontario and I noticed in Quebec. People were just,
Mm-hmm.
let's go, man. I'm tired of this
Yeah,
shit.
yeah.
Like everyone's ready. So everywhere we went, I felt like, even we laid pretty low for most of the time, but we owned a business and I was like, all right, well, look, all right, fucking not trying to go anywhere. Let's do our thing. So then by the time that came, I can't speak for my partner, my girlfriend, but like I was like antsy as shit to get out to breweries again because it's something that I really enjoyed doing.
Go do stuff. Yeah.
And go do stuff, exactly. And I felt like everywhere we went, it was rammed. It was really hard, at least in Montreal, I can speak to more so than here, but like it was hard to get a seat anywhere. It was hard to get into a restaurant or go into a brewery. And I was like, all right, this is good.
That's good.
I felt but I imagine though you are right that maybe like, tap rooms are a little different to other situations. And I feel like the beer people I saw, nobody seemed to be drinking less as such. So I imagine that they're consuming, but maybe they're not coming in to have a pint or two and then leaving with, 2 4-packs, 3 4-packs or something like that. So there's a difference, like you said, the experience, which is super key in getting to know if you're there all the time, and everyone at a brewery always wants to talk to the owner or brewer or whatever. So you're the guy, you're the face. They want to see you. They want to see Rob. Where's Rob at? Let me talk to him. It's a part of the vibe. So maybe there's like an adjustment period, because 2 years and some change is a long time to fuck with people's habits, psyche.
Oh yeah.
The way they interact with the world, and they're going to get back used to it again. So it might take a little bit of time a bit more time doing it. And now we're coming back into cold season, so who knows,
Well, I mean, I guess I'm 37. I mean, I've got a 2-year-old kid as well. Mabel's a lovely, lovely lady. But we've noticed in our friend group where I used to be out, even like I would be out 3-4 times a week, and now I'm going out once a week.
And why is that?
And it's just this shift of like
life?
Oh, I got to get home.
Phase of life.
And we also, but we invite people to our house way more. We have people here probably 3 nights a week right now, like regularly. So like we're still doing a lot of like, come hang out. We'll have, we're doing socializing, but we're not going out to the bars. And it could be time and place with having a kid at this age, and I'm sure it is a bit. But we've noticed with a lot of our other friends who are in the same age group, who are just like, they'll go out and have a nice dinner 1 night a week, and then they'll just not be out in the same way. So,
okay, interesting. So the people who previously were out, are just not out like that anymore.
Out as much. And so then if I was out 3 nights a week, I'd be at 3 different bars in town, or, like beer bars, whatever, breweries. And now you're just doing 1 a week. So it kind of like changes that dynamic up of like where you're going, where you're getting out, how many places, and how many people are in places.
That's an interesting point. It's a great observation too. I wonder, we didn't go out. I know I'm actually a really shit example because we had our own business, but our business is online. So our whole sort of like being at home, being comfortable at home has kind of just always been our thing. So we always go out for brunches. Pre-COVID, we'd always go out for brunches, and we'd be traveling a lot. Now we haven't traveled obviously since, but it wasn't. I can't really notice any major change. I guess we just kind of got used to sort of staying home a lot. It's sort of hard to even compare it because it kind of almost feels like forever ago. But if you were doing that, I feel what you're saying though. I'm even trying to think of friends and stuff. Like we always lived in Montreal, so most of our key friends were here. So it wasn't like we were seeing people anyway. We got friends in Montreal, obviously, but it was more like situational. You weren't always doing that. So it's like I don't have a direct comparison, but I feel that, and I hope it sort of does kick back in, but maybe people became homebodies because they didn't have a choice, and you did it for so long, and you kind of like...
And just get used to it.
You get used to it, you make, it was, it's really tough. You go to, because obviously we just moved, so we needed a whole bunch of stuff. IKEA's been nearly impossible to get things. We had to get a desk that wasn't a standing desk. We had to get the one with the fucking wind-up thing because all the ones with the buttons sold out. So it was half the price, so I guess that's better, but then we didn't have a choice. We're like, well, you want that or you want to wait another couple months? So, like, getting furniture. So it seems like people have focused on making their home their sanctuary to host, like you're doing. Maybe you were doing it anyway beforehand, but like, so, I mean...
Not to the same amount. Not to the same amount, for sure. Yeah, like... Like last week, we had like I have a speculative fiction book club. I'm in a D&D group because I'm super cool, and like, and then we had other friends just over for drinks the one night, and it was like that was just and then I was still out and doing shit. Actually, I worked all weekend too. So it's like I'm just as busy, but I'm actually at home a bit more.
But home more. Do you prefer it,
Yeah. I
or is
prefer
it
right
different?
now, especially with having the kid. And like it is one of those things of like I don't know if this is just their life.
Hmm. That's an interesting point. The kid is definitely a
Yeah,
factor in that for
is a
sure. So
factor in there. Yeah.
maybe it's a little tougher to know if that would have happened. All thing, if the
Yeah.
last 2 years were regular. I mean, just we
Yeah.
we're talking off air, but you got a puppy. Our puppy's about a month younger than yours, and we don't have kids, but this is very a new world for us, and because he's young, we haven't left him yet. So like
Yeah.
when it comes to, and I was told you're not supposed to. Some people say you. Other people have said, yeah, you can leave him, but I like being around him. I want him around. So I wonder what's going to happen to us in winter because in the summer we just go to places that allow him to be there. So I wonder
Yep.
what's going to happen in winter. Breweries are the best place ever because breweries are almost
You're
always
right.
dog friendly.
Yeah.
You go to a restaurant, that's different situation. So I don't know what's going to happen to us in winter. I imagine we'll just frequent more breweries because we're going to want to go out.
Yeah.
Maybe as he gets
Which is
older,
great.
just like with your pup, you leave him home, put him in a crate, whatever it might be, and good to go.
Yeah.
But at the same token, I don't know, it's just kind of fun. Our pup's just like yours. Yours is super cute. I saw him before. Our pup is like fluffy. He looks like a teddy bear. It's cute as fuck. Everyone loses their shit when they see him. Maybe everyone loses their shit when they see old pups. But like, I want him around, so I'm curious. Just thinking about it, this conversation now. Like, I wonder if we'll continue to be able to do things throughout the winter. I would hope so because it's fun. I want to go to breweries and
Yeah.
try new stuff
Absolutely.
and
Gotta
catch
do
a
shit.
vibe.
And
And
like breweries are 100% the right place for dogs.
yeah,
Like
it's easily the
yeah,
best.
you can totally do it. And if that's your hobby, then perfect. You're laughing with a
Yeah,
puppy.
yeah, you're right. And it makes me. I feel like that's a really good sign for the beer industry, though. The fact that they're so welcoming to dogs in inside outside. Where like I understand restaurants have a different situation. Maybe breweries with a food permit or whatever, it's a different situation. But
Man, earlier this year, I think it was just before summer, it was like spring, we did a dog talent show at the brewery because I have like this huge fucking warehouse. I was just like, we got to start doing different stuff. And so worked with a local dog group called KW Dog Friendly
sick.
and did like a dog talent show. And there was like 40 dogs and probably like about 100 people or so like kind of crammed in around this whole like area like turf area that we'd set up, and these dogs were doing tricks and shit. It was awesome. I was just like, yeah,
That's
like
sick.
this is exactly the type of random thing I love doing at the brewery that's just kind of fun. And you would have like never have thought, like if you walked into Short Finger that day, you'd be like, yeah, there's probably going to be 40 dogs here, and yeah, some of them are going to be doing pretty sweet tricks. And
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I don't know.
That sounds like I was just even as you were describing that, I was like, "Yo, that would be lit." I feel like that would be the type of situation that our little pup who cannot do tricks would be fascinated with. And you come in there and you drink some fire
Oh
beers and
yeah.
then watch these dogs do some cool ass shit. Like, we need to teach him to do that. Like that's
Yep.
awesome. Are you gonna do that again?
Yeah, I'm probably going to do it again in the fall. We haven't planned it out yet. We've been doing a lot of live music.
Dope.
We do punk shows on Saturday nights. So that's been a good vibe because I like it quite a bit, and not just punk shows, but sort of alternate stuff. And it's definitely a group of people that I'm trying to engage into. I think that like in general, I'm like I feel like Short Finger is a great place for your crowd of people. It's weird. The beer is maybe not exactly what you expect, but it's interesting. And, just like it's not, I find in Kitchener Waterloo, everything's just like kind of like a strip mall
Mm-hmm.
or sort of a milestones vibe. I
It's like Burlington.
really I don't want to talk shit on Beertown because I love Jen Tamsey. She's my friend. She's actually in my book club. Um, um, but like Beertown, this like vibe is just like a Montana's of beer kind of thing, and like there's a lot of that style stuff, and just like this really sanitized and like commercial vibe with nothing actually interesting going on. Whenever I walk into places, I'm like, this is the most boring, generic place I've ever been to. And I think that's a lot of why Short Fingers turned into what it is, like this dirty warehouse with just like a lot of random shit going on and weird beers, and like we have like a bocce court inside and like a foosball table on like our patio, and just like yeah, like we need more interesting, like, cool places to go to that are not just the same shit regurgitated in the same just vibe and advertising and marketing,
I
which
feel
bores
that.
the shit out of me.
Right. I've heard of. I haven't actually been out to any of the bars out there, but I've heard of Beer Town for that. But I know what you mean. That like the I used to work at Jackasses when I first moved to Canada in like
Yeah.
2004, so I know exactly what you mean. That sort of like chain restaurant type of thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there was honestly nothing wrong with them. Like
If
there's
they
nothing wrong with it. Like,
no,
and it's the same reason why Tim Hortons and those like that vibe works, because people are just automatically comfortable. They get it. They're not confused. Where people walk into Short Finger and I can immediately see on their face, they're like, "Oh, you like you don't know what the fuck is going on here." Because there's a homebrew shop, there's like I said, a bocce court, and then the tasting room's up over here. There's this giant hand of God pointing down from the ceiling, and just like kind of weird shit going on, and you've never been anywhere like it, and so you don't get it
understand it.
immediately. So it's that like initial like, do you like that, or does that put you off? And I
Gotcha.
think a lot of people get put off by things they don't immediately. I
Understand.
understand this.
Unless they're already
Yep.
craft beer fans that like, oh yeah, this is cool. It's another brewery. It's
Yeah.
different. It's weird. Let's go. Maybe the
Yeah.
Beer Town is the gateway pub of
Oh,
it's
I
the
hope so.
to bring people to turn people into beer fans that therefore would end
Yeah.
up excitedly discovering what you do.
Yeah. I mean, I recently started sending them bottles for that very reason of like, no, it's not exactly where I will be going, but there's a lot of people there who I would never see. And even if like a few people from there are like, oh, this is interesting. I like this sour peach cobbler or whatever I sent them. And they come check it out. Like, that's perfect. That's exactly what you want. Like, there
I
is
love it.
space for those venues for sure. But Short Finger isn't one of them.
Different vibes. No, I
Yeah.
fuck with that.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean though. That's dope. Do you want to do the last beer? What are we thinking?
Yeah. Let's do it. Um, okay. It's Tequila Barrel Coupage,
Mm-hmm.
the Bigger Than Kiss, or it's the Liberty Valence Brett beer, which I think got a little acidic over time because that is like an OG release with Jeff from Indie Ale House.
Love it. What do you reckon? What's the
Oh,
safest?
what's the safest?
What's the safest? Like, what would you like to drink?
Let's try Bigger Than Kiss. I don't think actually that is not the safe option, I would say. But I haven't had one of these in a little while, so
So let's roll the
I would.
dice.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do what you did. I'm going to run to the bathroom. I'll be back in about 45 seconds. So do you, in the mean? Oh, I've got the pool cork. Love it. Do you want to just tell everybody what's going on, what this beer is about?
Absolutely, I can do that.
I trust you, Rob. You're gonna do great. Give me 2
Yeah,
seconds.
we got it. We got it.
You got to take it care.
Um, so Bigger Than Kiss. This beer, I actually don't even remember when I originally released it now. But this is a coupage, which is the process of blending old and new beers together. And in this case, it was 4 different tequila barrels that I named after the members of Kiss. And then I blended fresh bitter saison into the base of this to make it the coupage that it is. In the end, with this blend, one of the barrels turned to absolute garbage. So it actually ended up only being a blend of 3 of the members of Kiss. And to no one's surprise, the barrel that shit the bed was actually Peter Criss, because the cat, who would pick a cat? So this beer, I'm trying to think. I haven't had it in so long. I don't remember if it was 2 full years in tequila barrels or not. But it was essentially the 3 different barrels, and the one essentially was really a sharp acidic, so it only got blended in about 10% into this. But still, all 3 of those barrels. He's back.
I'm back. How is she? Safe?
I talked the whole time, so I actually just had a sip. I think I told you I ramble.
No,
So,
you did tell me that, and I was like, "Oh, that's perfect for a podcast."
Yeah, well, you ramble on, brother.
Oh, bro, like ramble the fuck on.
Actually, you know what? This has changed quite a bit from the last time I had it. It is quite lovely,
Okay,
but
good.
it used to have a lot of oak characteristic coming through that the tequila sort of rode on a little bit, and that is softened significantly, which I have noticed happens quite a bit with bottles as conditioning. Oh, I use the corkscrew, man.
Oh, you use a corkscrew. Okay.
Yeah, I use the corkscrew on it. We stopped using these corks, I think, around this time because I was losing my mind trying to get them out. Like they
Every
were
time,
yeah, like it. So the corks that are in Lando are the like branded ones, and I switched over after these ones because it was just
too much.
pain in the ass to get them out. And we had people who would like send photos of like, I tried to get the cork out of your bottle and ripped the end of the bottle off, like glass and all. And I'd be like, yeah, I'll send you another one. I am sorry. That sucks. Like, nobody wants that.
It's I kind of remember this. Like, yeah, I've seen those the cork and cage many times where it's like this type of one, and typically they can be pulled out. But like often I've got this little.
Be able to pop them.
I got this cloth my mum sent me from Australia that it's got this little. It's like kind of like carpet. You know the shit you put under carpet that stops it from moving. It's kind of that stuff. So it's like that basic material, but cut into this little thing, so you can grab the top and it's
Yeah.
I love those.
Super handy.
Yeah, super handy. I use it all the time. Okay, so this is mellowed a lot, eh? This is great.
Oh, this is mellowed significantly. There was a very sharp oak note on this originally.
Okay.
And that is very, very much soft, and it, to me, it comes across as a light acidity with like cherry, like the flesh of cherry fruits mixed in there. No real bitterness or hop profile coming through on the end. When I first started doing a lot of these sours, I was very light on the hop components I did. So when I did the coupage on this, which is a blend of fresh and old beer, I actually used a pretty bitter saison to put the fresh component in, and even that has kind of dropped out of it. It still balances nicely, but this beer has changed significantly and has softened, is actually morphing a little more into I'd say kind of in line with the wax Poetic.
I can see that. So you might have described this whilst I was emptying my bladder. What a coupage?
Yeah.
What's a coupage specifically?
So I did mention this, but it is a blend of old and fresh. So it's taking the barrel. So this was 4 different tequila barrels and
Okay.
blending it with some fresh bitter saison. So adding in that lively new beer into it to brighten it up. I mean, at this point, this beer has been conditioned now for a few years, so it's that lively note has kind of softened,
Okay.
but yeah, it's
Okay. Perfect. What's the tequila barrels? Anything specific?
no, they were actually I got them through Willibald a while
Nice.
ago, and they had
Good blokes.
them. I get a few barrels from those guys every once in a while. Mostly their gin stuff for a beer called Fargo we do, which is a gin barrel aged golden sour with lavender.
Okay. That sounds interesting as hell too. Um,
Yeah.
did I pour too much stuff again?
Um,
I think I did.
I can't quite tell. I think it's like a little, but like
It's pretty. It's
mine
pretty
is
epic.
like
Yours is really
pretty
pale.
clear.
Man, I
Yeah.
left more than all the rest of them. I really thought I did it right. Like,
So
look how much I
normally
left.
what I do is I don't pour the full bottle to start.
Oh,
I'll
maybe that's
do
what I'm
half the
doing.
bottle. Try
Okay.
that, especially if it's just me, because then I'm like, am I going to drink all of this? Maybe. I mean, this is third world problem of, yeah, this beer. I like this beer. I'll drink half of it and then move on to the next one.
I respect it. I typically drink everything. Like
Yeah.
I've drank everything. I've just got a little bit of the second one left that I'll finish off after, and we're in business. But yeah, it's only
Yeah.
because like in the space of 2 hours, drinking 4 beers is a little. It's not so bad because everything was pretty light, to be honest. So it's not actually that bonkers.
Yeah,
But yeah,
heavy on the yeah.
so maybe I need to. Some the tip would be to pour like maybe half the bottle rather than trying to
Pour
fill up.
yourself, try it, drink it, and then usually my second pour will be a
You
little bit
just
murkier because you do rouse that the bottom a little bit
gotcha. Okay, perfect.
with that process. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this is. I feel like am I the tequila itself? How is that showcasing through the?
It is really softened, to be honest. It used
Okay.
to be much more apparent on this.
Mm-hmm.
It's more turned into a barrel aged golden sour than the tequila golden barrel,
Okay.
um, which is a little disappointing, to be honest, because I mean this is the thing with doing some cellaring of beers. There's a bit of an unknown of where they will go and what flavors will stick, what will drop out. Yeah, so it's not exactly what I was expecting from this one.
Okay.
So
Look, it's
not
interesting. It's
bad.
less carb, the lowest carb, the softest as far as that's concerned.
Yep. Yeah.
Still got like that chewy body, which I really
Mm-hmm.
personally love. Um, it's like kind of like a mild acidity. It's not. It's probably like actually no, I lie. When I took the first sip, I was like, "Woof!" It's actually more acidic or tart than the
Mm-hmm.
others. Is that accurate?
I would say it's pretty soft and actually a clean, but like the finish does leave a pucker, and you can kind of taste it on the sides of the mouth a little bit. So I would say compared to Lando and how soft Wax was, yeah, it's probably the most acidic.
Okay,
Yep.
making sure I had that
I
right.
took the chance on this one, and I feel like we should have gone with the Liberty Valance. Jeff is going to be pissed at me.
God damn it!
Sorry,
No,
Jeff.
it's. I
Yep.
think this is cool though, man. Like it's fascinating. I feel like even though we've had um, three barrel aged sours and a nice little low ABV pale ale, I feel like it's a I don't know. It's like a real interesting sort of like overview of what you do this
Mhm.
evening. And look, to give Jeff some love, this was the other beer that we were tossing up between. Um, here we go. Come on, there it is. Wonderful art right there.
Yeah, that's me and Jeff. Although
Very cool.
Jeff was very unhappy with that artwork. I felt like he didn't like how he came across, so I don't even remember why we did. Sometimes I have terrible ideas, and I think this label was one of them. It's like this old like Western movie I've never even watched, and I don't know why the name stuck or why we went with it, but I essentially had our artist rip the whole movie poster
And replace
and
the
turn it
faces.
into our label. Yeah.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I don't think it's a bad
Yeah.
idea. Ridiculous wins. Joe, we can do to please Jeff. We can. I feel like we definitely. This won't be the first podcast that we'll do. So what I can do is now I have a once again I was in a 1 bedroom apartment for 10 years and now I'm in a house with a basement. I've been able to set up my cellar with that before was just in boxes next to my bed. I can place that bad boy delicately on the shelf in there, and then we'll do another one in like next year, and we'll drink that then. Since we're doing all the fun stuff,
Absolutely.
I like your approach. I was only joking earlier, but I think it was kind of gangster. You're like, yeah, here's a bunch of shit you can't get, so we're gonna drink that. I don't know. I like that. I don't know. That's just funny to me. I like that a lot.
Like I said, I feel like it's always the backward approach with short finger. Whenever I think about it, I'm like, oh, I'm really bad at sales and like making this accessible to people, and that key component of my business, which is so important, of like, I need you to spend some money here so that my business continues and you can continue to enjoy these beverages. But that's always the like the back end. I'm like, oh yeah, I have this idea and now I'm gonna go with it, rather than like the tried true method, which like um doing the like reels and
We have to talk about
working
that.
the like social media side of things and trying to branch out from what I saw happening in the industry, where I got so bored with the feeds from all the main breweries I was seeing, like all the stuff in the States, like, the Vale, and like, I mean, Russian River, not so much, but these bigger breweries, and then into Canada where it was Bellwoods, and all these guys are just doing the same photos, slight tweaks on them, really well done, and totally geared to just like be appealing to people. And I totally get that, but I was so bored. And that is why I started doing the reels and just like kind of played into how our labels work. Of when you read our labels, if you read the like write up on the back of
I
Bigger
read
Than
all of
Kiss,
them. I think it's hilarious.
like it's kind of jokes and it's kind of about the beer, but not really, and it's just this sort of like weird kind of banter, and that's where I wanted to go with our image on social media. And as much as I don't love Instagram, it's kind of a necessity for a business in a
Kind of is.
brewery, but not wanting to fall into just like, oh, here's this really, really nice high res image of our bottle next to some barrels or on a tank, or like the brewers like holding it, or like all this whatever the you know people do a lot of, because it's easy and it makes
I
sense
get
and it
it.
looks good too.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it helps sell beer, but it literally bored the shit out of me.
So do you want to
And
describe what you guys do then, or what your approach was to sort of offset that?
um, I think to offset it, so it kind of comes down to short finger is the name. If it itself, it's named after me. Like, I have a short finger. Like, this brand and what the brewery is and the beers are all kind of built out of me and my personality. And that's problematic in a lot of ways for business. I think it's a very good for a small business, but also hard because you're so linked to one person. But
Mm.
there's personality that you can kind of pull from that, and hopefully, as a business and brewery that's so small, I'm trying to engage my local market mostly. I don't give a shit about BC. Like, I'm not exporting. My goal has always been to sell out of beer at short finger, like have a new beer every week that is being drank by the people of Kitchener, Waterloo, and like the surrounding areas. I'm not trying to get big. In fact, I often want to get smaller
Right.
and just like make my zone of control smaller, and so I'm always happy with everything we're doing. So the reels were kind of a transition from what we were doing on the labels, of kind of quirky, weird things that weren't the same thing that you'd see on all these clean. And I'm not trying to knock anyone at all, but like when I look at Matron, I love you, Mal, I love you, Justin. When I look at Dominion City, Jesse, I love you, brother. Stillfield, I don't know you, Owen, sorry. Like you're all doing the same look. Like it's this clean, folky vibe, like very, and it just like it was like I get it and it sells, and you breweries will probably always be more successful and larger than what I'm doing, and that is totally fine. And trying to just have this niche little weird, like these videos we do are just kind of, the one video was just me talking about this crazy squirrel that was like giving me shit in my own backyard, and like trying to talk about the beers but not being serious, and the whole brand in general. I'm trying to do some really cool, interesting beers and then contrast it with this dirty warehouse vibe and these funny labels and a kind of quirky, I'm just kind of a weirdo. And either you're into it or you're not. And that's what I've always said. Like it's not for everyone, but I think contrast, when you look at it in any sort of pairing, uh, sort of food, beer, wine, whatever, is always the hardest one to hit. But when you hit it, it's a beautiful thing. And I mean, there's some, it's subjective as to what's going to resonate with any one person. But I love it when somebody walks in and is like, yo, I read the write up on the back of Bigger Than Kiss. That's just fucking hilarious. Like, that's great. And I love the beer too, but I thought that was so, so good. And, like, or the people who just like all of a sudden get into Lando and are like, yeah, Lando is so good. And like, I love the vibe and everything. And it's a different approach to running a brewery, and I think the only way to do it is to be small, and whether it'll be successful or not in the long term, I have no idea. I feel like we're slowly but surely building up people who are into it, but it's not the regular beer enthusiasts who like flock to Third Moon.
Right.
Like the like hazy guys, they don't give a shit about what we do. And I think that's one of the reasons why you had never really had our beer before.
Yeah,
In
I
a
don't know
lot of
if
ways.
yeah,
Because
potentially.
that group that is very active
Mhm.
doesn't seem to care so much about what we're doing. And that's totally fine. Like, I have no problem with that. But like, it sucks in some ways of like, I feel like what Shortfinger is doing is very unique for Ontario,
Mhm.
but just gets like forgotten and not looked at by a lot of people who might actually enjoy what we're doing, because it's not the standard out there.
That's like the trendy stuff right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I knew the name obviously because I feel like I go out of my way to at least be familiar, right? I hadn't tried this stuff. Like I said, I lived in Montreal for 10 years. I come out here and the thing was that if it was the haze stuff, people would be talking in those circles, right? So then you hear about it. I think that you are doing a style of beers that obviously we've been drinking tonight that Ontario doesn't see enough and isn't as highly valued in Ontario as it is in Quebec. People lose their shit over Robin, over Orval, over Dunham, over those type of breweries that specialize in this stuff, and they're sort of exalted in a way that in Ontario they're either sought out by a niche group of people would come to Quebec or trade with people in Quebec to get those beers because they can't typically get it at home. So I think maybe the market for these is a little different here. And it's more just like, I almost feel like there's more breweries in Ontario that if you're not here all the time, that you're able to sort of discover, like, because I was going to say split my time, not living really, but like my beer time, I tried to split fairly equally. And I feel like maybe that did myself a disservice because then you sort of scraping the surface more on both. Like I still know a lot
Mhm.
about both, but then you still miss some gems. There's still a bunch
Yeah.
of stuff you just miss the boat. So it's kind of the more I've been able to get into your stuff since I've been here, I've really enjoyed it. And I was kind of like, oh man, where the fuck have I been the last couple of years? Like trying this stuff. So like I almost feel like someone like Justin at Toronto Brewing is an advocate for what you do, and then he told me, then we got in touch, and now here we are, right? So I think that's a cool
Yeah.
testament to, you know what I'm saying? People, even though
Well,
he's industry, but there's people who really fuck with what you're doing, who are proactively spreading the word. I think that's dope.
yeah, yeah. It's, it is a slow burn, and the guys at Volo, they've come down, Julian and Chris, and they really love Lando, and they're a big part of why I don't have Lando kegs at the brewery because they're always
Grabbing them
asking
up.
for it up there.
Yeah.
But they called it. They were like, you know what, this is great what you're doing. It is going to be a hard slog, and people are not necessarily going to immediately latch onto it.
Right.
Like because it isn't the trendy. It's not going that route so much.
Mm,
Um, so it is a harder approach to it, but I do think Ontario needs short finger. Most people
agreed.
don't realize that. I'm like, this is something short finger Kitchener needs. And I think it was maybe a month and a half ago, a local like beer influencer or whatever posted about short finger, and they did one of like our hoppy beers, and we never see them. They barely ever come in. Like whatever. Like I'm never too worried about it. But they posted like something to the extent of, this beer is so good, and was I just not paying attention? Have they been like knocking it out of the park this whole time? And I'm like, well, I think so, but I make it all. But kind of that like, I'm just waiting for you to like realize, yeah, there's really good beer here. You could come drink it whenever you want, which is such a funny like spot to be, making
Mm,
these like really like long term in depth beers that like Lando takes me 2 years to make.
yeah.
Like I'm like, I am really trying to make something unique for you, for Ontario in this area.
Right. Maybe it is. I feel like there's something cool about being the underdog, and that's kind of where you're at with this, and you're making a style that hasn't traditionally been. I mean, if you look at the provinces, Quebec has all been about Belgian, and Ontario's been
Mm-hmm.
about English styles. So it's sort of you're
Yep.
doing the Belgian style stuff to a level that is as you're sort of talking about this, I'm just like, if my friends, the certain people I was thinking about in Quebec, knew about what you're doing, they would lose their shit to try and get your stuff. Um, you can get putting this out there. I'll tell you more afterwards. But I know a dude who has an import company in Quebec who brings in stuff for the SAQ. So he brings
Mm-hmm.
stuff from everywhere. He's brought some stuff in from Australia. Does a lot from around Canada, from Ontario, from Europe and stuff like that. I feel like if you had the capacity, it would probably be worth your while to send a batch of Lando or something out to Quebec and to do a launch through them, because I think that market would be exactly who would already appreciate, because what you're doing here in Ontario is convincing and educating. If you're attacking
Mm-hmm.
someone like Quebec, you're appealing to the already converted
People
who are
already know. Yeah.
who are looking for something new and different, as all beer people are, whether you're in the haze world or otherwise. The haze one are the ones who usually get a lot of shit about it, but the folks who are into this stuff are equally as interested in something new and fun. So Ontario beer is highly valued out there. I know there's one of the stores. I don't know if it's like legal, so I don't want to say any names. But I know there's a store that a lot of them uses that charges quite a premium to send beer out to Quebec. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like a quiet, poorly kept secret type of
Yeah.
thing. I think you probably know who I'm talking about. And
Yep.
you know, a lot of people do that, but maybe they don't know to the quality of what it is that you're doing. And I feel like that could be worth your while. It's an interesting position you're in, being sort of the underdog, doing this style at this specific region that you need. Oh, you're not only doing that style, obviously. You're doing something
Yeah,
like
I do a lot of other stuff. But really, the thing is, the business, like I said, the model for me was always hyper local.
Yeah,
And
I
COVID
get it.
has definitely changed that in a lot of ways. But I never wanted to sell a drop of liquid outside of short finger. That was
Right.
my original goal. And I'm pretty close a lot of the times. Like
Okay.
I only have a handful of places, and not that I won't send out to other places, but like my original goal was like this is going to be this very small niche and unique thing for this area. And I don't know if Kitchener was ready for it. But
Maybe not. But the rest
yeah,
of you've been doing some fantastic collaborations as well, which obviously help get the name out, whether it's
yeah,
Sawdust or Third Moon or things like that, that sort of amplify the brand. And you know, sometimes things are a slow burner, and I feel that I do music, I do hip hop. My brother moved here for that, and I always felt like the shit that we do was really high quality, and I felt like we just never got the respect or the attention that it deserved. And I felt like a lot of it is a slow burner, and maybe eventually people are like, yo, that shit was fire.
yeah. Uh,
And I think there's nothing wrong with that, and sometimes that's just how shit goes. And it's more about the sort of positioning and I know this from the short time we've spoken that you are not going to do anything but stay true to what you do. And I think that's the best thing you could possibly do, because that's in a time where everyone's doing something and every market possible is convoluted and this busy. Your niche is shit. You're doing exactly what you do best, and
mhm.
that's all you can really do. And I would hope that the word would continue to spread via, like you said, that person posted that stuff. That's great. That's amazing. They're like, yeah, I think I might have even probably said something like, "Yo, where is this stuff been?" I was extraordinary. I think I told you beforehand. The last batch I spent a whole night. It's all I drank was all your stuff. I think I had like 4 cans in a bottle or something. It was pretty lit, but
Yeah.
it was great. And I was like, this is like, I was like, it wasn't like I just had one. Like, oh, that's all. And I was, no, I want to try this. Oh, I want to try this. Oh, let's see what this bottle's about. And I just enjoyed the whole experience of just drinking your beers for a whole night. And I felt that they were all so different and unlike anything that I would typically drink. And
Mhm.
they were at such a high level. I was like, this is sick. And that's why I kept the Lando in the fridge and only I put it in the cellar. But I was like, no, I'm drinking that soon. And then when we realized we needed it for tonight, I'm like, well, that worked out well.
Yeah.
But
I mean, in the end, Lando was my favorite beer tonight.
I would say
When we both the cellar stuff.
it would be my favorite too. The tangerine was just
Oh,
A1 money, and the
it's so good.
Yoda. This is I feel like this is
The
the
Yoda's great.
easiest. This is the easiest one to front on here.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
in a world of like it's a different level of beers and a different thing, but this is like you can't like discount the quality of this, and this is like something that I would drink every beer session. This is something it's like 4% big flavor
Yeah.
pale ale. Boom, I'm all about that. But man, I feel like we gave the people a nice little, at least a overarching sort of overview of what it is
Yeah,
that
I think
you
so.
guys do. Um,
I
you
feel
know,
like I wasn't weird enough.
no, maybe we need to get weirder
And
next time. Maybe we need to
man,
dress up or
yeah.
something. We need to have a.
I'm probably not gonna dress up.
I don't. I've never
Usually,
dressed up
I
in my
mean,
life.
I feel like I ranted on a little bit, but not like not
You
too much.
you kind of warned me that you were weird. I think we're all weird, and you were the least. I was like, this is
It's not that
completely
weird.
not
Yeah,
weird
yeah,
at all.
yeah, exactly.
I feel
Yeah,
like
exactly.
no, this was
Yeah,
great,
exactly.
bro.
Just a dude
Ju-
making
Just a dude
making some
making great
beer.
fucking
Just a
beers,
dude making beer. Here
what
we
I
are.
was what I was
Yeah,
hoping for. Now
yeah,
this has been great, man. I'm definitely going to swing by the brewery, and I want to hang out, and I want to like
yeah.
do some other content inside the brewery and capture all of that and soak up the vibe and everything. But I feel like we got the message across to people, and now I think you really said that great. That if someone is saying, "Where has this been? Have these beers been this good the whole time, and I've just been missing it?" I hope that y'all heard that, and everyone watching and listening are going to go out and go to your favorite store that's stocking the beer, your favorite bar like Volo and stuff that's pouring the beer, or go directly to the source, which would be the optimal situation, and hang out, soak up the weird vibes, play some bocce, listen to some
Yeah.
punk, drink some Lando, tell
We're killing.
all that, tell
Yep.
tell Rob that you've never tried it before and you'll bring out a Magnum. That's the secret plug right there.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah, yeah.
You
I
know,
might just do it.
you might just
Yep.
do it. It's no, it's great, man. I really appreciate you. Once again, I'm really glad we connected. I think it's fantastic what you're doing. I just like that you're sticking to your shit, man, and you just like owning it. Like, this is what I do, and not budging from it to appease a market or anything else. I don't know. I see a lot of value and I respect that a lot, because you're just like, fuck it. You know, you could be doing things where you'd be like, well, I could probably triple my money if I did this one, but you're like, no, this is what I signed up for, and you know,
Yeah, I mean, I just with our big party in August, I released our new shirt, which is the back. Actually, I'm wearing it right now. Is mix firm or death, and I was just like, yeah, fuck it, that's what we are, mix firm or death, man. If I can't
I
make
love
Lando,
it.
I'm fucking out.
Dunzo,
Won't do it. Yep. What's the point? I'll
and
just go work for someone else then.
that's fair. And I
Yeah.
feel like there's always going to be a market for a beer like that. I feel like maybe that market won't be absurd in a province like this, in a industry where trends fluctuate.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always a place for it, and I think there's always going to be a very happy target market that's going to be just blessed and honored to be able to drink a beer that quality regularly, which is the key part. It's not just like here and there and it drops a couple. Like, no, you always got this shit, and there's always different variants and different batches. It's great, man. Keep doing what you're doing. I know you will.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
I'm really glad, bro. I'm gonna wrap this up. Stick around, and we'll say goodbye off air. But where can everybody find Short Finger online?
It's shortfingerbrewing.com. You could just go to our bottle shop there. Rotates pretty much weekly. We almost release a new beer every week, and between the mixed ferments and the clean stuff we're doing.
Love it. And on
check it out.
social, it is Short Finger Brewing or Short Finger Beer.
Short Finger Beer, I think it is on Instagram. Yeah, I think that's what we are.
So make sure you check it out. Check out Rob's reels. The approach is fascinating. It's hilarious. You're just sort of like coming in there talking like you sort of like couldn't be bothered being there. There's something about it that is like appealing because it's hilarious and ridiculous, but it's getting across the point. It's just everything's authentic and honest. That's what I really love about the brand. Like, I feel like you're not putting on any airs. There's no bullshit. What you see is exactly the guy I expected to be hanging out with tonight, and you delivered, sir. So thank you for that realness.
Thank you.
I almost forgot. We need to take the thumbnail. I'm going to take a screenshot. Do you want to hold up bottle, can, whatever you can fit right there? Make sure we let them know. Here we go this way. Boom. All right, ready? Gorgeous. No, we got it. Let me just double check. Oh yeah, we got it.
We got it.
We got it. All right, beautiful. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do it. All right, no, fuck it. That's fine. All right, hang on one sec. I'm going to wrap this up, and then we'll wrap it up off air. But guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. If you enjoyed the episode, smash the thumbs up, hit subscribe below, and hit the notification bell so you know when the new drops. Follow us everywhere at BAOS Podcast. And check out the long-form audio. We're back in action. We're dropping every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Give us those 5 stars if you are so inclined on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It means the world, helps a lot. We will see you guys in the next episode. Get it in you.